One man's tranquil life is on the verge of erupting into battle deep in the Texas borderlands, where morality and the law are hazy like a desert mirage. All Logan Walker wanted was to take care of his sheep and put his previous career as a top-tier Special Forces K-9 handler behind him. However, the Los Diablos gang is unaware that they have just roused a sleeping giant when they make the deadly error of snatching his sheepdog scout. Titan, one of the military's most decorated combat K-9s with over 200 successful missions under his collar, lived on what they perceived to be a modest ranch with 2 dogs. Walker and Titan will now use their combined 20 years of fighting expertise and tactical training to dismantle the cartel's operations one by one. The cartel started a fight with the most lethal K-9 squad in Special Forces history, but they mistakenly believed they were dealing with a simple farmer. Tell us where you're tuning in from before we resume. Additionally, if this tale resonates with you, please make sure to subscribe, as I have something very special in store for you tomorrow. Ben Walker stood on his old porch, coffee mug in hand, watching the early sun cast long titans across his ranch. He had never been able to overcome the old habit of scanning the horizon with his eyes. Ben was proud of the precision with which his border collie, Scout, was already at work, herding sheep. Titan was lying next to his feet, watchful, the German shepherd's ears moving all the time, listening to every sound. "Isn't this morning lovely?" More to himself than to his dogs, Ben muttered. A faint remembrance of their common history caused Titan's ears to quiver in response. They were more than handler and dog after 20 years of Special Forces operations. They were comrades in arms. Ben noticed Scout's unexpected barking. The herding had ceased, and the border collie was looking straight ahead at the south fence line. With a low growl vibrating in his throat, Titan was on his feet instantly. Ben put down his coffee and narrowed his eyes as he noticed movement in the undergrowth. "Scout, go check it out," he said quietly. While Titan stood by Ben's side, waiting for orders, the border collie charged ahead. Ben observed via his binoculars as Scout expelled 2 men who had been lurking in the underbrush. They fled, leaving behind their camera gear and observation station. They were probably cartel scouts. This month, it happened 3 times. Ben yelled out, "Good boy, Scout," as the border collie came back, alert and proud. Titan eased up a little, but his gaze never left the direction the men had run. Salvador Morales banged his fist on the table in a compound tucked away in the Santa Sierra Hills 30 miles south. "Once more. We lost another reconnaissance mission because of that blasted dog." Miguel Valencia, who oversaw border operations for the Los Diablos cartel, raised his head from his laptop. "The ranch is starting to cause issues. It's impossible for our men to transfer goods through the hallway undetected." Their head scout, Dante Rivera, adding, "It's not just the dogs. Since those mutts began warning of our existence, the response times of the border patrol have increased. We're losing thousands of dollars in sales." Valencia squinted his eyes. "Tell me about the owner of the ranch." According to Morales, Logan Walker. "He runs sheep and keeps to himself. Spent almost 5 years there. Nothing noteworthy." "What about the dogs?" "For the sheep, a border collie. German shepherd that remains near the residence. The issue is the collie. Detecting our people is too good." Valencia approached the window while standing. "Next, eliminate the issue. Consider the border collie. Make a message." "Boss," Rivera cut in. "What happens if he objects?" Valencia flashed a chilly smile. "Then take everything. In our zone, no one disobeys Los Diablos." Ben was at the ranch fixing fences and keeping an eye on Titans when his neighbor Walter Shepard arrived in his vehicle. "Good morning, Ben." "Scout, are you helling out those sheep?" Ben wiped perspiration from his brow and grinned. "What pulls you out this way, as usual?" Walter's face became grave. "I heard some conversation around town. The cartel has begun occupying ranches as it moves north. Just last month, 3 properties were affected. Thank you, Walter, for the caution. Even though Ben spoke calmly, his mind was already calculating angles, distances, defensive postures, and other old habits that were dying hard. Ben, just watch out. They are not your typical criminals. They are creatures. Ben knelt next to Titan after Walter had left. Boy, what do you think? Are we prepared to leave retirement if necessary? His gaze met the German Shepherd's. They were still blazing with the same intensity that had carried them through innumerable missions. Ben watched Scout make his last rounds that night as the sun was sinking and the sheep were being corralled. There was more to the border collie than merely a sheepdog. He belonged to the family. Ben couldn't yet perceive it, but both dogs were attentive as Titan sat at attention close by. Xavier Salazar and his group of Los Diablos enforcers were already settling in around the ranch in the encroaching darkness. They waited for their turn while watching Ben's evening routine using night vision goggles. Salazar reminded his men in a whisper. The border collie is taken alive by us. The manager wishes to convey a message. Titan's ears pricked up as Ben was polishing his boots inside the house. Silently, the German Shepherd got up and walked to the window. There was a problem. In his bones, Ben sensed it. The darkness was shattered by Scout's warning bark before there was an abrupt pause. Ben's hand automatically went to the spot where his service weapon had been. Titan had already arrived at the entrance, waiting with strained limbs. The night was going to get really exciting, as they both knew from years of training. The initial action had been taken by the cartel. They were going to discover the importance of never underestimating some men and pets. Titan glided silently next to Ben Walker as he walked through the darkness with seasoned skill. The training of the German Shepherd began on its own. No needless movement, no barking. They had previously done this hundreds of times, but not in the United States. Ben muttered, "Track," while clutching Scout's favorite ball. Titan's nostrils opened wide, absorbing the aroma. Both of them had learned from 20 years of military operations how important the first hour following a kidnapping was. They reached the south fence along the trail. Ben shook his head when he discovered new tire tracks and cigarette butts, amateur errors. By his standards at least, these weren't professionals. Titan, what are your thoughts? Maybe 5 males, maybe 4. In agreement, the dog's ears twitched. Their years in special forces had taught Ben to read Titan's signals like a book. A car with its lights off came up. Titan and Ben vanished into the darkness. Sheriff Trevor Armstrong emerged from his police car and scanned the area with his flashlight. Trevor cried out, "Ben, you're a little late for a walk." Ben came out of the Titans. Scout was taken. The border collie. Why would somebody? As awareness set in, Trevor's comments were interrupted. The Diablos? Are they becoming careless? Ben pointed to the proof. Not that they're trying to cover their tracks. Ben's face was examined by Trevor. For a man who recently had his dog taken, you're taking this incredibly calm. Sheriff, panic never solved anything. Ben's eyes were stern, but his voice was firm. Furthermore, they are unaware of what they have just begun. Both men looked at Titan's heightened awareness. With its ears forward, the German Shepherd's head moved to face the road. More companionship? With a hand sliding to his sidearm, Trevor asked. No, Ben said, listening carefully. It's a civilian automobile. The left rear was shot with suspensions. Walter Shepherd's pickup pulled up a few seconds later. Miguel just told Ben at the gas station that he observed 3 SUVs traveling quickly towards Santa Sierra. There was a dog in one of them. Trevor reached for his radio. Sheriff Armstrong is here. In the last hour, I need eyes on any cars going south towards Santa Sierra. The radio made a crackling sound. Sheriff, make a copy of that. About 40 minutes ago, the Border Patrol reported 3 black SUVs crossing at the old river point. Miguel Valencia was receiving reports from Xavier Salazar at the Los Diablos complex. "Boss, we have the dog. No issues, clean operation." Valencia grinned. "Fantastic. The rancher didn't even get out of bed. They're soft, these Americans." Salvador Morales was not really certain. "Something doesn't feel right. It was too simple. You worry too much." Salazar chuckled. "What will a single farmer do to oppose Los Diablos?" Ben was in his study back at the ranch, taking out a locked case that he hadn't opened in years. Maps, encrypted phones, and tactical equipment, relics from his previous life, were found inside. "Titan, I should have anticipated this." As we relaxed and let our guard down, the German Shepherd observed Ben laying out comprehensive maps of the border area. "That's over now." Whistling at the apparatus, Trevor entered the study. "Do you want to explain the use of military-grade tactical equipment by a sheep farmer? Do you think I'm a collecting enthusiast?" His eyes missed Ben's attempt at comedy. "Ben, stop the charade. I also served. Ranger Regiment 75th. When I see Spec Ops gear, I recognize it." Trevor folded his arms. "Really, who are you?" Then Ben remained silent for a while. "K-9 Unit, 22nd Special Forces Group. The majority of Titans and my 20 years were classified." "Jesus," whispered Trevor. "The cartel doesn't know who they're up against, does it?" Ben checked a satellite phone and said, "No. And I want it to remain that way for as long as I can. The element of surprise, etc." "What do you play?" "We first verified Scout's whereabouts." Then Titan growled low, interrupting Ben. The German Shepherd was looking out the window with great interest. A car door banged outside. Ben raised his hand, but Trevor pulled out his weapon. "Get down." If it was a threat, Titan would act far more aggressively. With her badge out, DEA agent Victoria Blackwood entered the porch. "Mr. Walker and Sheriff Armstrong. We must discuss Los Diablos." Ben returned his attention to his maps and remarked, "Perfect timing. We need your assistance with something." "I'm here about more than just your dog," Victoria said. "Nowadays, Los Diablos does more than only transport drugs. They are establishing an empire by occupying ranches along the border. Their main smuggling route passes directly through your property." So, Trevor decided, Scout was only the beginning. "Mr. Walker, you are being tested. They'll steal everything if you don't answer them." Ben and Titan exchanged glances. "Yes, I will reply, but not in the manner they anticipate." Scout was being held in a temporary kennel behind Valencia's compound in Santa Sierra. Since his abduction, the border collie had remained silent, observing everything with keen intelligence. "Wonderful dog," Dante Rivera noted. "He seems to be researching us." "It is merely a sheepdog," Salazar said. "Concentrate on more significant matters. We have 24 hours to get our message to the rancher. We then take the entire property." Rivera was not persuaded. "Perhaps we need to have looked at his background first." Context. "He owns a few of dogs and works as a farmer." "Give up your paranoia." Ben was getting ready back at the ranch. Putting the tactical vest over his chest was like meeting an old friend. Ben checked his customized K-9 tactical vest, which had saved both of their lives on numerous occasions, while Titan sat patiently. Ben stated to Trevor and Victoria, "I understand what you're thinking. This seems excessive for a dog that has been stolen." "Actually," Victoria said as she looked at the maps, "Los Diablos may have just committed their greatest error in history." Ben whispered softly, caressing Titan behind the ears, "You have no idea. Boy, are you ready to work?" In a split second, Titan's stance shifted from that of a serene house dog to that of the superior military K-9 he had always been. Victoria retreated because the shift was so abrupt. "Very impressive," she muttered. "You haven't seen anything yet," Ben said, making one last check of his equipment. "They believe they are dealing with an ordinary farmer, according to Los Diablos. It's time to prove their mistake." Trevor looked at his gun. "What should be done first?" "We collect intelligence. Tonight, Titan and I will conduct some recon. Just gathering information, no strikes yet. I plan to keep Los Diablos unaware of our approach for as long as feasible." Ben and Titan were ready for their first secret mission in years as night descended over the borderlands. The participants were unaware of their true opponents, but the game had altered. The kidnapping of Scout marked the start of a battle, not just a criminal act. It took us a long time to prepare and tell this story, so please subscribe to our channel if you find it entertaining. It means a lot to us. Let's return to the narrative. Ben and Titan felt the desert night envelop them like a comforting blanket. Their footsteps were silent on the stony ground as they traveled together through the darkness. Their destination, the Los Diablos facility, was on the outskirts, although the lights of Santa Sierra could be seen in the distance. Titan's nose twitched as he froze. Years of training took control, and Ben immediately fell into a crouch. On the dirt road below, a patrol car drove by, its occupants not paying attention to the two Titans on the ridge. "Boy, it's just like the old days," Ben muttered. Titan's ears perked up in reaction, but his concentration did not waver. Ben went through the layout of the compound with his night vision goggles. There are 3 main buildings, a number of smaller structures behind the main structure, and guard towers at each corner. Although there was a lot of security, it was nothing like what they had experienced while serving in the military. Titan heard a bark he recognized. Scout was being held in a makeshift kennel in one of the barns. In addition to being alive, the border collie was also observing, learning, and gaining intellect in his own unique manner. "It's smart," Ben mumbled. "Scout, keep your head down. We'll be there." Salvador Morales and Miguel Valencia were inside the compound going over security footage. According to Morales, the rancher has not taken any action. No calls for assistance, no cops. Valencia scowled. That isn't typical. By now, most people would be raising hell. Xavier Salazar entered the room and suggested that he might be afraid. Or perhaps he is more intelligent than we initially believed, Dante Rivera interrupted. "I made some inquiries. Prior to his purchase of the ranch, no one knew anything about him. He seemed to be non-existent." "You're paranoid," sneered Salazar. "He is merely a farmer. A farmer who owns a shepherd of military caliber and can afford the best security systems." Rivera retorted. "The numbers don't add up." Titan stiffened as Ben, back on the crest, recorded guard rotations. 3 SUVs with low suspension and heavy loads were making their way toward the complex. Ben muttered, seeing the movement of the cars, "That's not drugs. Shipment of weapons." Ben observed the unloading of crates as the gates opened. The shapes were familiar to his trained eye. Probably military-grade assault guns. This was no longer only about drug smuggling. Agent Victoria Blackwood brought coffee to the sheriff's office, where Trevor Armstrong was working through the night. "Does Ben have anything?" she inquired. "As scheduled, there will be radio quiet, but I have another idea." Trevor laid out a number of pictures. These photos were taken at ranches that are now owned by Los Diablos. "Look familiar?" Victoria looked at the pictures. "The ranches are serving as checkpoints for a larger network that they are creating." "That's right. The trigger was Scout disrupting their scouts. Ben's property was always going to be a moving target." Victoria wondered if they had chosen the wrong target intentionally or accidentally. Although the security of the compound was good, Ben had seen better. As he drew the blueprint, including patrol routes and guard stations, Titan lay next to him. Suddenly, the German shepherd's ears pricked up. "Boy, what is it?" Ben muttered. Titan's training began to take effect. There was a little inclination of the head toward movement in the brush behind them. Ben remained motionless and his breathing remained unchanged. "Is it a friend or an enemy?" he muttered. Titan gave a single tap of his tail. "A friend." As Alex Ramirez crawled up to them, he remarked softly, "Mr. Walker, you're a hard man to track." The supervisor of the border patrol said quietly. "According to Agent Blackwood, I might come into you here." Ben answered dryly while taking in some bird watching. "Those birds are fascinating." Alex gave the complex a nod. "For months, we have been working to encourage people to look inside that location. You have them now. What are you going to do about it, I wonder?" "Nothing as of yet, officially. A raid requires probable cause." Alex hesitated. "Informally? When you need a team, I've got one ready." Scout barked again below them, more urgently this time. Ben observed Salazar walk toward the kennel through his scope. Salazar snarled and kicked the cage, saying, "Shut that dog up." Scout stopped talking, but he kept his gaze fixed on the enforcer. Ben's mouth clenched. Titan growled, barely audible. "Easy," Ben muttered to Titan and to himself. "We do this correctly. It's something we have to do just once." Rivera was becoming more and more uncomfortable in the facility. "There's a problem. It's too silent." Valencia raised his head from his computer. "Describe." "This type of operation is not new to me. The silent ones. Those who, when struck, don't make a sound. They are the ones who pose a threat." Salazar proposed, "Then let's send him a message he can't ignore." "Don't take his dog." Valencia said no. "We hold off. He'll take the hint and go if he's intelligent. Otherwise?" He grinned icily. "This is our land. That won't change with one rancher." Ben and Titan headed back toward the property as dawn drew near. They had all they required. Intel. Layouts. Trends. It was time to make a plan. Ben whispered, "Titan find." They took a different path back, with the German shepherd leading them through the desert. Never take the same route twice. Another lesson from their time in the service. Victoria and Trevor were waiting at the ranch with satellite photos and coffee. Victoria noted Ben's intricate drawings and remarked, "You've been busy." Ben said, "They're moving weapons, military grade. The ranches are being used as distribution centers." "That makes a difference," Trevor thought. "No," Ben clarified, examining his equipment. "It simply increases our aims." Scout was taken to deliver a message. "It's time to return one." Titan watched the morning while sitting alertly. The German shepherd was prepared. He knew the indications from years of combat operations. The calm before the storm. The strain in the motions of his handler. They had just handed a highly skilled special forces operative and his military dog something they hadn't had in years, but the cartel believed they were dealing with a mere farmer. A mission. Ben Walker also never failed to complete a task. 10 miles east of Santa Sierra, around midnight, is the Los Diablos weapons cache. The abandoned warehouse's perimeter was monitored by T.W. guards. They turned their gaze out into the night. They didn't anticipate Titan. As he had been trained, the German shepherd moved like a ghost. Don't bark. Don't snarl. Just deadly efficiency without sound. There was no sound as the first guard fell. Titan's accurate takedown, which left him alive but unconscious. Ben said from his place, "Good boy." At the sound of movement, the second guard turned, but it was too late. Ben moved quickly and precisely out of the Titans. Another stealth takedown, a leg sweep after a brief blow to the throat. He said into his radio, "Clear." After emerging from their hiding places, Trevor Armstrong and his deputy hurried to secure the guards. "As you mentioned," Trevor muttered. "Not very secure. Out here, they don't anticipate trouble. That will soon change." Ben looked at his timepiece. "The next patrol is in 20 minutes. Ben and Titan navigated the weapons hoard within the warehouse with well-honed efficiency. Ammunition, explosives, and weapons of military quality. Sufficient to equip a small army. As Trevor took pictures of the serial numbers, he observed, "This is bigger than we thought. These are weapons used in the military. They're being supplied directly by someone." Titan was already looking at the next room when Ben said, "Follow the mission. Our goal is not to resolve the entire cartel issue. Simply send our message." Miguel Valencia was looking over surveillance footage at the main compound when his phone called. "You mean that the guards aren't answering?" His expression clouded. "Now send a crew out there." Morales Salvador reached for his keys. "I'll take care of it myself." Valencia said, "Take Salazar. And locate Rivera. How someone got that close without us knowing is something I'd like to know." Then Ben and Titan had completed their task back at the warehouse. Charges are positioned strategically throughout the structure. Controlled enough to avoid collateral damage yet sufficient to destroy the weapons. 5 minutes, Trevor said. Ben gave Titan a hand signal to keep an eye on the door as he nodded. The German Shepherd's stance abruptly shifted as martial training took over. In the distance, headlights came into view. Over the radio, Deputy Mason Clark reported the company. Ben mumbled, "Just on time. Clear out, everyone. This will be handled by Titan and me." Trevor and Ben began to object. "This isn't our first dance, I assure you." 2 SUVs arrived at the warehouse as Trevor and his group started to retreat. 4 armed guys emerged with Morales and Salazar. Morales said, "Check the guards. Next, sweep the structure." Titan sought orders from Ben. They had been working together for 20 years and were practically psychic. It only required a small movement of the hand. As the cartel members dispersed, the German Shepherd wandered into the darkness in silence. Titan positioned himself precisely, and Ben watched through his scope. What took place here? Salazar discovered the guards unconscious and demanded. "Excellent work," Rivera said as he stepped out of the second SUV. "Like a military takedown. I warned you that there was a problem with that rancher." The door of the warehouse squeaked. 2 members of the cartel lifted their firearms and went to look into it. Ben muttered now. A black blur of concentrated aggression, Titan erupted from the Titans. The German Shepherd's training ensured a quick and accurate takedown, and the first man went down hard. Ben was on the move as the second man turned to shoot. It was replaced by years of special forces training. The man was knocked down with his weapon clattering away after 2 swift blows. Ben had already vanished back into the darkness as Morales and Salazar turned around. "It's a trap," yelled Rivera. "Everyone is out. It's too late." The warehouse was rocked by the initial explosion, which was followed by other controlled explosions. Carefully planned destruction erupted from the weapons arsenal. Morales instructed them to fall back, shooting aimlessly into the night. With military accuracy, Titan appeared on their flank and killed another cartel man. As Ben had intended, the anarchy was total. "What on earth is this guy?" Salazar yelled as he hurried to his car. Ben's voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. "Think of this as a message. Give the dog back, or this is only the start." The wounded were left behind as the SUVs drove away. Titan went back to Ben's side as he came out of hiding. "Nice job, boy," he said, examining the German Shepherd for wounds. Titan's goal was accomplished when his tail waggled once. Over the radio, Trevor's voice crackled. That message was great. Watching the warehouse burn, Ben retorted, it's just the opening move. We are currently awaiting their reply. Valencia listened to Morales's account at the complex with increasing rage. This was done by one man and a dog. Not any man, Rivera demanded. The strategies, the way he moved. He is in the military. Perhaps even greater special troops. Not possible. Salazar struck the ground with his fist. We looked into his past. Not well enough, of course, Valencia answered icily. Discover the truth about him. Right now. The sound of distant explosions caused the border collie in Scout's kennel to raise his head. He waggled his tail a little. He was familiar with those noises. There was help on the way. Back at the ranch, Dawn discovered Ben and Titan washing their equipment. Trevor came with news and coffee. The cartel's ranks are in disarray, according to border patrols. The value of that weapon stash was millions. Excellent. Titan's military vest was examined by Ben. They realize we're serious now. They will strike back. I'm hoping for it. Ben grinned glumly. They're upset and unsteady. People make blunders at that point. Scout, too. They will ensure his survival. Their only leverage is him. Ben's face became stern. However, they recently discovered the consequences of threatening what is rightfully mine. As cars approached, Titan's ears pricked up. Walter Shepard and other nearby ranchers showed up in 3 pickups. Walter said, heard what happened, and left. I thought you could benefit from some outside eyes and ears. Ben looked at the collection of grizzled faces. They were more than simply ranchers. These men were fed up with being surrounded by cartels. Thank you very much, Ben said. However, this can become hazardous. Walter spit out. Been hazardous for many years. Now, differences were retaliating. Ben observed Titan practicing with his backup tactical gear while the ranchers positioned observation stations throughout his property. He and the German Shepherd were eager for more action. This was the first time the cartel had underestimated a veteran of special forces and his military dog. However, it was just the start. Ben had 20 years of combat expertise to draw from, and Scout was still waiting. The actual conflict had only just begun. Miguel Valencia's face was a mask of barely restrained wrath as he gazed at the file before him. Special Forces for 20 years. More than 200 combat missions were successful. Knowledgeable in both canine warfare and tactical operations. And you're telling me that before we seized his dog, no one checked this? Dante Rivera moved apprehensively. The documents were buried far away. His past was something that someone wished to conceal. Salvador Montes, the German Shepherd, interrupted. Titan. He isn't your typical military dog. He was their best dog handler. Several medals for fighting. The file was thrown across the room by Valencia. No farmer was robbed by us. We took something from a ghost. A man who has been trained to hunt and murder people just like us. Scout kept a watchful eye on the increased activity in the kennel area. Security measures were improved and the number of guards doubled. The border collie watched everything calmly. The same way Ben had trained him in those secret meetings in the evenings. Ben, Trevor, and Victoria were at the ranch going over satellite photos when Walter Shepard's truck sped up the driveway. The cartel is relocating. Walter yelled. 3 convoys are moving in this direction. Ben looked at his timepiece. Exactly on time. Prepare, Titan. Already, the German Shepherd was in motion. Ben assisted him in putting on his tactical vest as combat training kicked in. This was not your typical K-9 equipment. It was equipment from their time as special forces. You knew they were coming, Victoria said. They had to, Ben said, examining his own apparatus. They are risking their reputation. Is everyone in place, Trevor? The sheriff gave a nod. Every approach is watched by nearby ranches. The key highways are monitored by border patrols. Remember, we're not here to fight, Ben warned. This has to do with obtaining intelligence. Allow them to initiate contact. In an intimidating display of force, the convoys came from 3 different directions. Tactical trucks and black SUVs with highly armed guys seen through the windows. Victoria mumbled, "That's quite a response for one stolen dog." As soon as they discovered who I am, this is no longer about Scout. Ben used his binoculars to observe. They're communicating that they're not scared. Are they correct? Do they have to be scared? Ben grinned icily. They are already. They brought an army for that reason. At the ranch's entrance, the lead car came to a stop. Xavier Salazar emerged holding a loudspeaker. "You have an hour to leave, Logan Walker. Los Diablos currently owns the ranch." Titan gave a low growl. Ben touched the shepherd's head, soothing him with his palm. Ben whispered, "Agent Blackwood. I think you're going to get the warrant you requested with probable cause." Victoria's eyebrows went up. "In what way?" "Because they will make a grave error in around 30 seconds. 2 cartel members appeared with RPGs just in time. They targeted the ranch home." Victoria said into her radio, "That's a military-grade weapon. Every unit moves in. We have a good reason." Vehicles from the border patrol emerged from concealed locations, causing chaos. The cartel members frantically rushed, stuck between their initial goal and the progress of police authorities. Ben said, "Titan watch." The German shepherd's stance abruptly shifted as he saw the cartel's actions, his battle training taking over. Ben was already on the move when Salazar brought up his weapon. The takedown appeared smooth due to years of preparation. It was a quick succession of blows that rendered the cartel lieutenant unconscious before he could fire a shot. The voice of Victoria called out, "Federal agents. Put down your firearms." A few cartel members promptly turned themselves in. Others attempted to escape, but local ranchers and police barred all of their paths. Ben told Titan to check the cars. The German shepherd maneuvered precisely, pointing out which cars were carrying drugs or weapons. Ben noticed a familiar face attempting to hide amid the confusion. Marcus Lloyd, a former contractor for the military. The parts came together with a click. He informed Trevor that was their weapons supplier. "Bad Special Forces. Do you want me to stop him?" Number released him. "He will guide us back to their primary source." Valencia was informed of the unsuccessful force demonstration at the complex. He had a nuclear reaction. He shouted, "They made us look weak. This is over. Take the border collie to me." "Sir?" asked Rivera. "We'll show Walker what happens when you challenge Los Diablos if he wants to play army. Piece by piece, we will deliver him his puppy." However, guards discovered something surprising when they arrived at Scout's kennel. No fear was causing the border collie to cower. He was sitting quietly, observing them with a peculiar vigor. "There's a problem with this dog," remarked one guard. "It seems to have knowledge that we do not." He was not mistaken. As Ben had taught him, Scout had been waiting, learning, and watching. Titan stood watch while Ben returned to the ranch and inspected the weapons that had been taken. Victoria pointed out that this equipment is of professional quality. "Military vendors." "Marcus Lloyd," Ben said. About 10 years ago, he was also a member of Special Forces. Went into the private sector before going missing. We now know his whereabouts. He was someone you knew. Was aware of him. Money was always more important to him than mission. Ben looked at his phone. "Someone is following our friend. He is currently being tracked by 3 distinct agencies. Isn't this about more than just getting Scout back? Trevor inquired. Ben gave a nod. Los Diablos has been getting ready for a major event. The trigger was Scout disrupting their scouts. They would always encroach on this land. And now? They are now unsteady, angry, and making their hand appear too soon. Ben looked at the maps. Next, they'll attempt something spectacular. Will they succeed in their attempt to harm Scout in order to reach me? Ben and Titan exchanged glances. The first rule of Special Forces was forgotten. We collaborate with others. Scout isn't merely holding out for help. He is obtaining intelligence. The border collie. Victoria had a doubtful expression. If you have the correct experience, you'd be astonished at what you can teach a dog. Ben looked over his tactical equipment. Scout is intelligent and has received instruction that none of them are aware of. He is more than only a hostage. He is the man within of us. Ben and Titan got ready for their next move as night fell. The cartel had displayed their desperation, their hand, and their military affiliation. It was time to help them realize who they were really up against. It was essential to Scout's survival. At the Los Diablos facility, night had fallen when Scout initiated contact. During those covert evening sessions, the border collie had spent days learning guard rotations, observing patterns, and performing exactly what Ben had taught him to do. As he watched Scout pace his kennel, the night guard whispered, "The dog is acting weird." His partner said, "It's just a sheepdog," without raising his head from his phone. Scout's deliberate movements went unnoticed by them, and they were unaware that his nervous pacing was actually mapping distances and identifying blind spots in the cameras. Ben had developed a four-legged spy in addition to training a sheepdog. Agent Victoria Blackwood and Ben were going over thermal imaging at the ranch when Titan became agitated. "Boy, what is it?" Ben saw that his partner's stance had changed and inquired. With a phone in his hand, Trevor Armstrong came into the room. Marcus Lloyd was just seen at the Mexican embassy having a meeting with a military attaché. Victoria slid over a file and added, "Not just any attaché. Colonel Juan Herrera has been the subject of a weapons trafficking investigation." Ben mumbled, "The pieces are coming together. Los Diablos is constructing an army in addition to smuggling drugs." Scout resumed his act at the compound. The guards eventually listened when he began to complain. "Quit talking." The kennel was kicked by one guard. Scout gave a strong howl and started to limp. "Great," moaned the second guard. "Valencia is going to have our heads if the dog dies." To see how he was doing, they opened the kennel. Scout showed off his training as soon as they did. Instead of running, he hobbled to the yard's corner, causing the guards to leave their posts and causing a blind spot in the security pattern. Ben muttered, "Smart boy," as he observed from his concealed location using his long-range scope. Mark, Titan. The blind spot that Scout had exposed was committed to memory by the German Shepherd. Now, this was a coordinated effort with 3 highly skilled dogs rather than merely a rescue mission. Miguel Valencia and Marcus Lloyd were meeting within the compound. "It wasn't our plan for your weapons cache to be hit," Lloyd stated icily. Valencia yelled, "How was I supposed to know the rancher was Special Forces? You ought to have looked. The federal government is now taking notice. Colonel Herrera does not feel pleased. The colonel ought to focus on his own issues. We have more pressing problems. Walker is not alone in his efforts." Lloyd's face grew serious. "What are you saying?" "Ranchers in the area are banding together. Response times for the border patrol are quicker. We are being coordinated against." Walter Shepard was hosting a clandestine gathering of ranchers in the neighborhood cafe. He informed the assembled crowd that Ben had given them a chance. For the first time, someone challenged Los Diablos and prevailed. Someone protested, but they'll hit back harder. We cooperate because of this. We learned how to observe and report from Ben. We are citizens defending our houses, not vigilantes. Victoria brought news to Ben and Titan, who were testing new tactical equipment back at the ranch. It's Colonel Herrera's turn. Tomorrow evening, he has been summoned to a meeting in the compound. Perfect timing, Ben said, examining his gear. Scout's research is yielding results. Their whole security pattern has been mapped by him. How do you know? Ben grinned. Since I prepared him for this. Scout has been doing clandestine operations on my ranch for years, but everyone sees a sheepdog. Testing security and identifying flaws. To him, it was a game. According to Trevor, it's a game that keeps him alive. Ben said that he's providing us with precisely what we require. Observe. They watched Scout start his evening ritual via the security stream. The border collie seemed to scent or mark territory as he roamed his allowed range and stopped at designated spots. Ben clarified that he is identifying camera blind spots, demonstrating patrol time, and establishing patterns that we may take advantage of. Did you train your sheepdog to spy? Victoria questioned with disbelief. Under the pretense of games, I taught him how to play hide and seek, find objects, and create distractions, basic military canine ideas. Ben looked at his timepiece. He'll give us our first meaningful opportunity in 3 minutes. Scout started his performance on time. A small limp and some moaning were exactly what Ben needed to get the guards' notice. Ben declared that the main compound will be the focus of security when Herrera visits tomorrow evening. Scout has shown us 3 possible points of entry. This is crazy, said Trevor. In fact, it's functioning. Scout isn't just getting by, Ben said. The only way he can defend himself is by fighting back. It's time for us to contribute. Titan was alert and waiting for commands. Due to his military experience, the German Shepherd was able to comprehend the tactical implications of the openings that Scout had disclosed. We will require a diversion, Victoria stated. It's already planned. Ben gave a nod as Walter's pickup approached. The ranchers in the area are sick of living under constant dread. They are prepared to stand. Walter and a dozen other ranchers followed him outside. 20 more families are prepared to assist. Tell us what you need, please. Los Diablos will see what happens when a community fights back tomorrow night, Ben explained. Scout kept up his act within the compound, but his eyes were on guard. He had provided Ben with what he needed, pointed out his shortcomings, and charted the trends. All he could do now was wait. Unaware that his hostage was actually a skilled agent, Valencia watched security footage. It's a broken puppy. Excellent. Forward the initial image to Walker. Prove to him what happens when Los Diablos is challenged. Scout was prepared, however, when the guard with the camera came up. Teeth and claws are not necessary for every fight. Making your opponent underestimate you is sometimes the best defense. Ben San itized his equipment, carefully inspecting each component. Los Diablos would discover tomorrow night that kidnapping Scout wasn't merely an error. It was the start of the end for them. Are you prepared to labor, Titan? With the aid of combat training, the German Shepherd's posture straightened. The actual operation was going to start soon. Ben and Titan took their positions on the ridge overlooking the Los Diablos facility amid the tense desert night. Just as planned, Colonel Herrera's convoy had just entered the main gates. Scout's information collection was about to pay off underneath them. Every unit is in place. The radio crackled with Trevor's voice. The escape routes are blocked by Walter's people. Copy that, Ben said quietly. Ready for a Titan? Years of combat training were clear in every action as the German Shepherd's muscles stiffened. They needed a diversion, so they watched as Scout started his evening ritual. Valencia was in the main building of the property, talking with Marcus Lloyd and Colonel Herrera. Next week, the cargo of weaponry arrives. Everything is ready. I hope so, Herrera snarled. My supervisors are anxious following the weapons cache incident. Valencia told him the situation was under control. Walker will not be an issue for long. The guards at the fence saw scouts whining. As planned, they moved to see how he was doing, forming the blind spot he had been taught to produce. Titan moved like a ghost now, just as he had been taught to do, Ben muttered. He was never noticed by the first guard. The man was rendered unconscious by a precise, silent, and effective takedown. A second later, Ben came out of the Titans, his moves just as well practiced. Ben reported quietly that the east side was clear. Over the radio, Walter's voice could be heard. On the south road, there was movement. 3 cars are attempting to evade detection. Victoria replied, that'll be Lloyd's personal security. To intercept, the border patrol is on the move. Ben and Titan moved through the outer perimeter of the compound, taking advantage of the security holes Scout had exposed. They were almost psychic from years of collaboration. A tiny gesture here, a hand signal there. Lloyd was becoming anxious in the main building. My men aren't reporting in, so something's amiss. Valencia sneered, paranoid as ever, but Herrera's face darkened. The colonel said, check the cameras. As Ben had intended, the security feeds revealed nothing out of the ordinary. Scout had exposed all of their surveillance flaws and blind spots. Titan mark, Ben said quietly. The German Shepherd advanced, seeing dangers before they were real. Unaware of what hit them, 3 more guards fell softly. When Scout saw Ben coming through the kennel fence, he started his last act. Ben needed mayhem, and the border collie's fake limping pulled additional guards from their stations. There are several cars coming from the north. According to Trevor. Ben answered just in time. Are your people prepared, Walter? Everyone is positioned how you intended. The nearby ranchers had been preparing for days, blocking all escape routes. This was a communal fightback, not just a military effort. Lloyd's phone buzzed inside. We have an issue. My security crew was just seized by federal agents. Valencia yelled, it's impossible. Nobody was aware of this meeting. Herrera drew his handgun and replied icily, someone did. They're playing us. The sound of cars approaching pricked Titan's ears. Ben looked at his timepiece. Right on time, Agent Victoria's DEA squad is taking over. Victoria spoke over the radio, all units, move on my mark. Titan and Ben arrived at their destination. He could see Scout keeping up his performance through his scope, distracting the guards. Ben's years of silent instruction had paid off, as the border collie had done flawlessly. Federal officers. When DEA personnel broke through the gates, the property erupted in turmoil. Vehicles from the Border Patrol emerged from concealed locations, blocking escape routes. Find it, Titan. Ben ordered. Leading them through the commotion to Scout's position, the German Shepherd bounded forward. They had been ready for this for years of fighting. Despite their best efforts, Valencia's security personnel was caught between several threats. Like ghosts, Ben and Titan navigated the confusion, eliminating opposition with well-honed effectiveness. According to Trevor, Lloyd was jogging. Let him, Ben said. He will be picked up at the barricade by Victoria's crew. Ben had taught Scout to utilize a warning signal when his barking changed tone. He saw Herrera and Valencia heading for a covert escape through the confusion. Track, Titan. Ben gave the order. Their escape route was closed abruptly as the German Shepherd bounded forward. Ben came out of the darkness behind them. Colonel, are you going somewhere? Ben was quicker than Herrera, who whirled and raised his weapon. The disarm appeared smooth due to years of special forces training. When Valencia attempted to run, Scout blocked his way, and the border collie's once present limp vanished for no apparent reason. Very good performance, Ben said to Scout. Well done, boy. This can't happen, Valencia sputtered. All he is a sheepdog. Ben clarified, no, as Titan shifted to guard the area. He has been collecting intelligence on your operation for days and is a highly skilled operator. You simply were unaware of it. Herrera and Valencia were taken into prison by Trevor and Victoria, who arrived with their teams. The shooting had subsided outside, replaced by the planned mayhem of a successful raid. Victoria reported that the compound was secure. Lloyd was attempting to get past the rancher's barricade. It wasn't even necessary for Walter's team to get their hands dirty. Ben knelt next to Scout and examined him for wounds. Titan joined them, and the border collie's tail waggled. Finally, the three dogs were reunited. Trevor noted that it was quite big effort, with Scout mapping their security, communicating with other ranchers, and scheduling it to coincide with Herrera's visit. Ben retorted, observing his dog's interactions, there are times when the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't know exists. The most crucial precept of combat, never undervalue your opponent, was overlooked by Los Diablos. However, Ben's face stayed solemn as federal officers escorted the inmates out. This was far from over. Although they had dealt a serious blow, cartels had a long history. There was going to be reprisals. He was flanked by Titan and Scout, both dogs alert and prepared. The battle for the borderlands was only getting started, but the first battle had been won. At dawn, Los Diablos responded. At the same time, 3 ranches on the outskirts of Red Rock caught fire. The message was clear, Ben was no longer the only focus. The entire neighborhood was being declared at war by the cartel. As he watched the flames rise from his front porch, Ben noticed that they were attempting to isolate us. He was flanked by Titan and Scout, both dogs on guard and looking for danger. Turn the villagers against one another. Before the home, Trevor's pickup skidded to a stop. Already, 4 families have been forced to leave. Anyone who assisted with the raid is being targeted. That's their error, Ben said, looking at his tactical equipment. They simply provided everyone an excuse to defend themselves. Alejandro Reyes, who oversaw the entire Los Diablos operation, watched video footage of the compound raid at a posh residence in Mexico City. He had a stone-carved expression. He told his gathering lieutenants that Valencia was weak, but he was correct in one thing, this insult must be tolerated. The local community, law enforcement, and one lieutenant warned all back the rancher. After that, we terminate that support. Send in the ghosts, Reyes said, turning to his chief enforcer. Ben was back at the sheriff's office in Red Rock, working with Walter and other ranchers. The walls were adorned with maps that indicated community resources and cartel movements. With Titan and Scout watching intently, Ben clarified that they would initially target the distant ranches, isolate the resistors and attempt to create a corridor of terror. Walter said, we're already seeing it. This morning, 3 more families were threatened. Next, we alter the game. Ben indicated particular spots on the map. We provide designated rally locations and safe areas. These days, no one stands by themselves. Victoria came in with new insight. There is movement, a sizable convoy is leaving Mexico City and moving north. These are professional hit teams, not street gangs. Ben whispered, the ghosts are the elite enforcers of Los Diablos. From my time in special forces, I've heard of them. How bad? Inquired Trevor. They're so bad that even cartels are afraid of them. They are former military personnel, primarily from Venezuelan and Colombian special forces. They frighten in addition to killing. Scout alerted them to movement outside with a quick bark. Armed with hunting guns and a strong will, a group of locals had assembled. According to their spokesperson, we were informed about the safe zones. We are available to assist. Ben looked at their faces. Shopkeepers, ranchers, farmers, and ordinary folks were pushed too far. He cautioned them that this would not be simple. Professionals are sent by the cartels. Someone shouted, "This is our house. We've finished our run. With their military experience clearly visible, Titan and Scout navigated the crowd, keeping an eye out for any threats. The dogs were now seen as symbols of defiance and evidence that the cartel was not unbeatable. Colonel Herrera's arrest had caused a stir at the Mexican consulate. Singing like a bird was Marcus Lloyd, who was still in detention. After looking over his confession, Victoria said, "The weapons pipeline goes deep. 3 nations' worth of military equipment was routed through Los Diablos." Ben came to the conclusion that they were utilizing the ranches as forward operating sites to assemble an army. And now? They will now attempt to take them by force and use anyone who objects as an example. That afternoon, the ghosts first appeared. It was different this time, but 2 more ranches attacked. No survivors, military techniques, precision strikes. Ben informed the assembled community leaders that they were sending a message. When you resist, this is what occurs. So we just give up? Walter insisted. No. Ben turned on a sequence of satellite photos. We take advantage of their strategy. Although the ghosts are good, they are accustomed to frightening people. They have never encountered coordinated opposition. Ben laid out the defense strategy while Titan and Scout showed off their synergy. The dogs demonstrated teamwork to the assembled townspeople by moving in perfect unison. The cartel anticipates fear, Ben added. They anticipate being alone. Rather, they will discover solidarity. Trevor looked over the tactical plans. Before things get better, they will get worse. You can count on it. Ben looked over his gear. The ghosts will search for gaps in our fortifications. They will become frantic if they are unable to find any. Then. Next, we set the trap. Ben indicated some places. They believe they are pursuing us. It's time to let them experience what it's like to be the victim. The neighborhood came together as night fell. Families were relocated to safe places by ranchers. Networks of communication were created. Crash courses on defense and coordination were created by distilling years of military expertise. Titan and Scout patrolled the outside of the event, their improved training showing in every step they took. They were no longer merely security dogs. They served as a community's first line of defense. Ben informed Victoria and Trevor that the spirits will arrive tonight. They will come into position under cover of darkness since they prefer to attack around dawn, when people are just waking up. How do you know? Since I'm a professional at it. Ben took one last look at his tactical equipment. They are experts. They will adhere to protocol and what is effective. Victoria recognized that was their weakness. That's right. Professionals start to look the same. They overlook the fact that occasionally altering the rules is the best course of action. Ben, Titan, and Scout were standing on his porch as midnight drew near. Vehicle lights flickered through the night in the distance, and the ghosts positioned themselves precisely as he had anticipated. He informed his hounds that they believe they are preparing an ambush. They are unaware that they are approaching one. It was going to be a hard lesson for the cartel to underestimate its rivals. One rancher and his pets were no longer the only focus of this. A village was battling for its existence. Additionally, Ben Walker made professionals regret their predictability during his 20 years of Special Forces expertise. Years of Special Forces training were evident in the ghosts' motions as they moved through the pre-dawn darkness like titans. Anticipating frightened civilians, they practiced precision as they approached the community's designated safe zones. Ben Walker and his hounds were waiting for them instead. Walter's voice crackled across the radio, "Contact West." A 4-person crew traversing Thompson's former cornfield. "Copy that," Ben said quietly. Scout and Titan stood on either side of him, their bodies stiff with attention. Keep in mind that these are professional operators, not cartel thugs. Follow the plan. Diego Vega, the Ghost's commander, observed his troops taking up positions while wearing night vision goggles. He knew something wasn't right because of his 20 years of special forces experience. He whispered into his radio that it was too quiet. "The patrols are where?" His response was a series of coordinated explosions along the perimeter. Properly positioned explosives exploded, lighting up the night and causing the Ghost's night vision apparatus to malfunction. Vega snorted, "Amateur trick," but then he noticed the defensive positions of the community, which are interconnected and meticulously hidden. This was military-grade tactical preparation, not popular opposition. With years of battle experience on display, Titan moved first and fought the closest Ghost team. Their formation and communications were disrupted by the German Shepherd's attack, which was not only aggressive but also well-aimed. "We trained for professional operators," Ben said to Scout. Using the strategies Ben had subtly taught him over the years, the border collie lunged forward. Instead of attacking, he was responsible for herding the spirits into the precise location Ben desired. It was too late for Vega to grasp that they were boxing us in. His squads were routinely pushed into pre-planned kill zones, sandwiched between law police sniper teams and community defensive positions. Over the radio channel they had commandeered, Ben's voice could be heard. "Commander Vega, 45 degrees to your left. That's a clever strategic move." The blood in Vega ran cold. His name and position were meant to be unknown. Then he growled, "Special Forces." "The Special Forces of the Rancher." "Was," Ben said. "I am now merely a man defending his community. However, I felt that some professional etiquette could be appreciated by you professionals. A crossfire kill zone is where you are. Your sides are exposed, and your night vision is impaired." When a Ghost squad attempted to flee, Titan and Scout herded them directly into Trevor's deputies. It was evident from their cooperation that this had been practiced because the dogs moved with military accuracy. Vega said, "Fall back." However, Ben had also foreseen this. Ben's radio picked up Walter's voice. "Targeted vehicles, like you mentioned. They covered the Ghost's escape routes. They had planned for and anticipated every possible backup position. This person shared their specific viewpoint, therefore it went beyond simple strategic planning. You have two options," Ben's voice said again. "Either try to shoot your way out or give yourself up to the federal agents on your left." But before you made up your mind, the sound of Titan and Scout barking in unison reverberated through the night. Keep in mind who you are interacting with. The DEA teams from Victoria came out of hiding, their flashlights shining on the stranded Ghost teams. The skilled operators were ensnared in a traditional Special Forces ambush. One of Vega's lieutenants murmured, "This is not possible. All they are is farmers." "No," Vega clarified, acknowledging the trap's tactical genius. "It was us who made the amateur error. Our opponent was underestimated." Alejandro Reyes was informed of the Ghost's failure with icy rage back at the Los Diablos command center. His intelligence officer said they were ready. The entire community responded with military-level organization and coordination. Reyes glared at one man. "A whole town has turned against us because of one ex-soldier." But, the officer clarified, not just any soldier. Walker was among the best, according to our sources. In the history of Special Forces, his K-9 unit had the best success rate. When the sun rose above Red Rock, the community's defensive network was successful and the Ghost teams were in prison. Ben watched as federal officials processed the inmates alongside Titan and Scout. Victoria threatened that they would send someone else. "You can count on it," Ben said. It was only the first wave of Ghosts. This humiliation won't be taken lightly by Reyes. Trevor came over to look over the casualty reports. "No casualties among civilians. Your strategy was a complete success. Everyone contributed to the plan's success." Ben turned to face the assembled members of the neighborhood, regular folks who had refused to back down. Los Diablos is unaware of the true nature of their conflict. "What is that, too?" A community that has had enough of fear. Titan and Scout kept a close eye on Ben while he checked his gear. Expert operators are reliable. They depend on isolation and horror. They have never encountered a whole community prepared to defend themselves. Ben's face, however, stayed solemn despite the community's celebration of their triumph. Although they were expert operators, the ghosts were only the start. Los Diablos would give it their all in response. He assured Victoria and Trevor that the next time, they would arrive with overwhelming force. Crush everything at once, please. How do you know? Since I'm a professional at it. Strike quickly and forcefully, leaving no space for opposition. Ben observed Titan and Scout collaborating in perfect coordination. Which is just what we will allow them to attempt. The cartel was about to discover that the person with the most guns isn't always the most dangerous opponent. Before you do anything, it is the one who knows exactly what you will do. With military advisors and cartel lieutenants surrounding him, Alejandro Reyes stood in his Mexico City compound. The walls were covered with satellite photos of Red Rock and in-depth intelligence files on Ben Walker and the defense system in the area. They thought like soldiers, which is why the ghosts failed, Reyes said. We won't make the same error twice. We crushed them with overwhelming power this time. Ben, meantime, was holding a different sort of briefing in Red Rock. While residents gathered to hear the plan, Titan and Scout monitored the community center. Ben pointed to important spots on the map and said, they'll bring everything they have. Heavy weapons, multiple attack vectors, and no survivors. This time, they cannot afford to leave witnesses. How are we going to resi? St that? Someone inquired. By forcing them to battle ghosts. Ben shared his own satellite images. They are currently amassing forces here, here, and here. Red Rock is the focal point of all three staging areas. Victoria came with new information. Drone surveillance attests to that. They're using some heavy gear. Heavy guns, APCs, and even some combat vehicles of military grade. Perfect, Ben said, casting perplexed glances. They're taking advantage of us. Scout and Titan were abruptly aware of movement outside. Several more ranchers, their vehicles full of supplies, joined Walter inside. Walter said, just like you asked, underground storage is ready. No one would ever be aware of its existence. Excellent. Ben looked around at the assembled crowd. Red Rock must appear deserted for the next 48 hours, as if their terror tactics were successful. Trevor was the first to grasp. We're setting a goal for them. That's right. To destroy a community, they are bringing an army. Rather, they will discover prepared positions and vacant buildings. Ben's eyes became stony. They will simply be simpler to catch because of what they bring. Weapons and trucks kept coming to the cartel's staging areas. Phillips, another former military contractor who replaced Marcus Lloyd, oversaw the preparations. As one officer watched armored trucks being unloaded, he said, "This is overkill. There is no such thing as overkill after what happened to the spirits." Phillips examined the shipments of weaponry. In addition, Reyes wishes to illustrate what occurs when individuals oppose Los Diablos. The community back in Red Rock worked through the night. Ben's meticulous plans were followed, and they turned their village into a sophisticated trap. Scout and Titan circulated among the groups, maintaining a positive atmosphere. Observing the dogs at work, Victoria saw that they have become symbols. More than that, said Ben. They serve as evidence that anyone can fight back with the correct preparation and training, and that Los Diablos is not unbeatable. The actual preparations of the settlement were made underground. Well-planned escape routes, reinforced fighting positions, and concealed bunkers connected by utility tunnels. Walter noted that it was like a prairie dog settlement. Ben clarified that it was more like a combat warren. Every path is planned, every entrance is covered. They will be attacking a deserted town when their army arrives, but we will be right under their noses. Titan and Scout showed how defenders may go through the network covertly by demonstrating the concealed entry points. Ben had turned their military training into a community-wide resource. According to Trevor, Los Diablos believes they are interacting with terrified individuals. They are unaware that they are entering a battleground that has been planned. Reyes got the final intelligence report in Mexico City. As anticipated, the town seems to be evacuating. Isn't this too simple, sir? His intelligence officer interrupted. Walker is Special Forces, he is aware of our approach. Reyes grinned icily, of course he does, but what other option does he have? That town might be destroyed 3 times over with the firepower we're coming. From the staging area, Phillips called Reyes. We roll at dawn, and the first wave is ready. Great, keep in mind, no survivors. Red Rock turns into a case study of what occurs when Los Diablos are contested. Ben, however, was finishing up his own preparations at the command center located beneath Red Rock's community hall. Titan and Scout trained civilian volunteers to navigate the network of tunnels in silence. Ben informed Victoria and Trevor that they anticipate opposition. Fighting an opponent they cannot see is something they are not prepared for. Victoria recognized it was urban warfare. We're transforming the entire town into a battlefield. Ben gave a twist, revealing the last part of his scheme. They turn every building they secure into a trap. Every stance they adopt turns into a liability. Walter came in with the Lookout's news. It appears that the cartel is preparing for a morning strike by sending support teams into position. Ben checked his watch just in time. It's time to make the last preparations. The community vanished beneath over Red Rock. The village appeared vulnerable and deserted at first glance. But below the streets, a whole society readied itself for conflict. Titan and Scout positioned themselves at strategic places of observation. Coordination of the defense would be greatly aided by the military training of the dogs. They're approaching with overwhelming force because they're scared, Ben reminded the assembled defenders. Worried about the fate of the ghosts. Fearful of losing command. And they're weak at that. You become predictable when you're afraid. Since they are familiar with regular military doctrine, they will adhere to it. Ben's face was serious. However, we are not engaged in a typical conflict. Los Diablos gathered their forces as dawn drew near. In order to destroy a small border town, they were bringing an army. They were going to discover, instead, why some opponents are most dangerous when they seem defenseless. Ben Walker had spent 20 years learning how to use overwhelming force against itself, and now the storm was about to shatter. The distinction between tactical intelligence and military might was about to be revealed to the cartel. An apparently deserted Red Rock was exposed by the first rays of morning. The morning stillness was broken by the engines of the armored vehicles of Los Diablos as they came up from 3 sides. Ben monitored their approach via networked cameras in the command bunker under the community center. As we anticipated, he reported discreetly that there were 3 mechanized columns. Scout, Titan, postures. Through the ground network, the dogs proceeded in silence. They had trained for this moment for years. Scout kept an eye on the cartel's movements from covert observation stations while Titan directed the defensive squad. Phillips was in charge of the cartel's main attack unit, and their formation reflected his military background. According to intelligence, the town appears to be clear. His second-in-command murmured, "Too clear. It feels wrong." "Of course it's incorrect," Phillips said. "Special Forces is what Walker is. He has a plan. It won't matter, though, with this much firepower." A column of tactical vehicles followed the first armored personnel carrier into the town square. With skilled efficiency, cartel warriors secured buildings in textbook formation. Ben's speech crackled via secure radios in the first phase. "Give them the impression that they are in charge. The defenders of the village kept vigil underground from specifically set up observation posts. Trevor's deputies guarded the west, while Walter's crew kept an eye on the eastern access. Victoria reported from her position that big weaponry were being brought in. Heavy machine guns, anti-tank missiles, and even certain combat vehicles of military grade. Good, Ben said. It will be increasingly difficult for them to back out the more hardware they commit. Ben recognized the immediate arousal in Titan's ears. They watched via the camera network when Reyes himself pulled up in an armored SUV with special security. He came himself, Trevor noted. I didn't anticipate that. Pride, Ben said. He has to manage this alone after he gets rid of the spirits. Another cliched move. Scout's soft barking was picked up over the tunnel system. 2 long, 3 short. Code for the placement of heavy weaponry. Ben translated, they're preparing for a sweep, standard doctrine for urban combat. Building by building, clear and hold. Phillips used his skillful expertise to guide his forces. Take the sheriff's office, first team. Secure the community center, second team. Sweep the residential area, third team. With their rifles at the ready, cartel soldiers advanced through deserted streets. Signs of a hurried departure were meticulously prepared, and every building they entered seemed deserted. One team leader said there was no opposition. It appears that they actually ran. Ben watched the cartel men move over his prepared battleground from the command bunker. Titan and Scout held their ground, using the signals Ben had taught them to communicate with civilian defenders. Walter said they were inside the main target area. Hold positions, Ben said. Let them give it their all. Above ground, Phillips watched over his troops as they took control of important structures. The deserted streets indicated their display of force had been successful, but his military background warned him something was off. Another source stated that Building 7 was secured. No interaction. Another crew said that 10 structures had been removed. Towns were abandoned. Reyes got out of his car and looked about at what he thought was his triumph. See, like everyone else, Walker and his people ran away. Phillips interrupted, Sir. I suggest that we check for booby traps beforehand. Ben's trap went into its first phase. Carefully planned charges exploded all around the town, disabling rather than killing. The wheels of the armored truck tore on concealed spike strips. The tactical network of the cartel was disrupted by the activation of communication jammers. Ambush. Phillips yelled, but his training told him otherwise. The conventional defense positions Ben had prepared for were the ones he ordered his soldiers into. Ben ordered the second phase. The signal was passed by Titan's and Scout's defense system. It seemed as if the town came alive. In buildings, hidden panels opened. Hidden firing positions came to light. The cartel forces' tactical advantage vanished as they were abruptly exposed. There were. Shots seemed to be coming from all directions as Reyes demanded. Look for them. Ben's prepared postures, however, were dynamic. The defenders traveled across the subterranean network, showing up in one place, then vanishing and attacking from another. Phillips discovered, too late, that they were beneath us. The town as a whole is rigged. While Scout coordinated with one group of defenders, Titan led another group through the system of tunnels. Because of the K9's military training, the civilian fighters were expertly guided by their signals. Trevor reported that the east portion was closed. Their cars are stuck. Victoria added, west sector contained. No way out. Ben's voice was heard over the cartel's hacked radio system. Mr. Reyes, did you really believe we'd leave our houses? That we would flee from criminals with pricey toys? Track him down. Reyes let out a scream. Now find him. Ben, however, appeared everywhere and nowhere. By moving in unison, Titan and Scout enabled the defenders to attack from several angles, destabilizing the cartel soldiers. Phillips saw his tactical edge evaporate. He informed Reyes that this was not civilian resistance. This military operation is planned. We must pull out. No. Anger twisted Reyes' face. A rancher and his dogs will not degrade me. We're losing cars, sir. There is no communication. Blindly, we're fighting. Ben led the defense precisely and strategically underground. The defenders were able to keep ahead of the game thanks to real-time updates on cartel movements from Titan and Scout's intelligence network. According to Walter, they are gathered close to the town hall. They appear to be attempting to set up a command post. As anticipated, Ben answered. The third phase is about to begin. The order pricked Titan's ears. Leading his group through the network of tunnels, the German Shepherd emerged at carefully timed intervals. The tactical training of the border collies proved to be just as successful as that of any special forces unit, and Scout's handlers followed suit. Above ground, the cartel soldiers had to contend with an adversary they were unable to observe or anticipate. Every structure they believed to be safe turned out to be a trap. They made every defensive position they created a target. Phillips grumbled as he observed another car that had been rendered inoperable by concealed defenses. The whole town is a place of death. Ben's voice came back over their radios, not killing. You would be killed if that's what we wanted. Mr. Reyes, this is your final warning. Either withdraw your forces, or we'll demonstrate our true capabilities. Then Reyes reached for a radio. Do you believe you have one? We're just in the first wave. I have more guns and more guys. Ben interrupted, more targets. Examine your surroundings. Farmers and ranchers have pinned down your professional soldiers. Civilian defenders are defeating your military equipment. Do you still believe that the solution is overwhelming force? The cartel forces were encircled by Titan and Scout's coordinated moves, locked in areas they had created for their own murderous purposes. Ben's approach wasn't merely effective. It was tearing apart the cartel's whole strategy. Final warning, Ben said. Give up now or suffer the repercussions. The whole breadth of the trap was exposed by the morning sun. To destroy a town, Los Diablos had brought an army. Rather, they became entangled in one of the most advanced defense maneuvers in cartel history. And this was only the start. Alejandro Reyes, trapped in Red Rock's town square's death zone, saw his tactical advantage erode. His professional men were held down by invisible defenders, communications were still blocked, and 3 more vehicles were disabled. Abruptly, he gave the order to burn it. Set everything on fire. Nobody will if we can't have this town. Phillips gave him a look. In those structures, sir, there are guys. I don't give a damn. Prove to them what happens when Los Diablos is challenged. Ben used intercepted frequencies underground to keep an eye on their communications. With military accuracy, Titan and Scout coordinated the defenders' movements while holding their places within the network of tunnels. Victoria noted that they were becoming desperate. They are hence harmful. Ben checked his tactical display and said, no. They are predictable because they are desperate. Observe. Cartel soldiers started using incendiary devices above ground. Following normal military doctrine for urban warfare, they moved in a textbook manner. Ben informed his defenders, just as we planned. The fourth phase. Titan. Scout. Carry out. The dogs navigated their designated areas, their signals guiding inexperienced civilian personnel. The town's concealed sprinkler systems came on as the cartel soldiers got closer to their targets. Water. Reyes let out a scream. Do you believe we'll be stopped by water? Phillips discovered too late that it was not water. Military-grade foam for fighting fires. The entire infrastructure has been rigged by them. Ben's preparations outlasted the cartel's incendiary weaponry. Every time the town was set on fire, advanced defenses were put in place. There are other people with military resources besides you. Their radios carried Ben's voice. The distinction is that ours is being used for protection rather than destruction. Movement in the eastern sector was indicated by Titan's characteristic bark pattern. Scout confirmed in his response. Back alleys are being used by Cartel soldiers to flank. Ben explained textbook approaches to Trevor. They're acting according to the rules of urban warfare. Set off the subsequent trap. The flanking operation was stopped by hidden barricades that sprung up out of the ground. In predetermined death zones, the Cartel teams were unable to go forward or back away. This isn't feasible. One of the team leaders yelled. They are always one step ahead of us. Phillips observed yet another tactical blunder. He knew what they were up against because of his military background. It was more than just opposition. It was a defensive warfare masterclass. Reyes commanded them to target their command center. Somewhere they must be cooperating. Phillips protested, "Sir. We are losing males. We're not fighting civilians here. This defense network is expertly prepared." Ben oversaw the subsequent stage underground as Titan and Scout continued to collect intelligence. Because of their military training, the K9s were able to manage several civilian teams at once. Reporting from the western sector. Walter's voice could be heard. Their big armaments are being moved into position. Ben said, "Just where we want them." "Is your team prepared, Victoria?" "There are DEA tactical units in place. The border patrol is waiting." With their remaining heavy weapons, the Cartel forces tried to set up fire positions above ground. Every favorable spot was already covered, they discovered. Every tactical location is ready. Another position turned into a trap, so Phillips gave the order to pull back. "Our own strategies are being used against us." Reyes, however, defied logic. "No turning back. Bring in the demolition crews. If you must, level every building." The sound of faraway explosions pricked Titan's ears. Ben saw the demolition crews from the Cartel advance through the camera network. "The last stage," he ordered. "Every unit should follow the Prairie Dog protocol." The town appeared to change. Hardened fighting positions emerged from hidden bunkers. After months of training, the civilian defenders appeared from hidden spots with well-coordinated movements. Phillips mumbled, "My God. The whole town is a stronghold." The demolition crews had just arrived at their targets when Scout gave the warning. The structures they planned to demolish were already strengthened and ready for this kind of situation. "You have no idea what you're actually fighting for, do you?" Ben's voice came back. "One man or two dogs aren't the issue here. This is about a community that made the decision to defend itself." Then Reyes reached for a radio. "Do you believe that being prepared makes you strong? I've got a whole cartel. This force is 10 times what I can provide. Examine your surroundings." Ben gently answered. "You have your professional soldiers stuck. Your military equipment is worthless. You have lost your tactical edge. Still believe that the answer lies in numbers." The last encirclement was orchestrated by Titan and Scout. Teams of civilians moved with trained accuracy, each group understanding its part in the overall plan. Phillips reported, "Sir. We are totally encircled. They have blocked all means of escape. Not possible. Our numbers and firepower are superior." Phillips cut in, "And it means nothing. It's not a fight. An execution is taking place. They have no intention of killing us. They are proving that they are capable." Ben's voice came back. "At last, someone gets it. Final opportunity, Mr. Reyes. Give up your forces, or we'll demonstrate the power of a genuinely driven society." Trevor saw the tactical demonstration underneath. "Their alternatives are dwindling." Ben answered that they never had choices. Every action they took and every decision they made was premeditated. Titan, Scout, last places. The dogs positioned their squads. The cartel forces were ensnared in the most advanced trap they had ever come across. Phillips made one final attempt, "Sir. We must give up. We are up against ghosts that are aware of every move we make before we do it." Reyes wasn't done, though. "No, I need to play one more card. Not even your cherished tactical genius could have foreseen it." Ben grinned glumly. Scout, Titan, echo of protocol. The dogs responded right away. The last part of Ben's defense plan was activated by their coordinated actions. Ben's voice came through one last time. "You see, Mr. Reyes. Veterans, there is a thing you should know about fighting special forces. We don't prepare for your actions. We account for anything you might do." The full scope of Red Rock's metamorphosis became seen in the dawn light. An invincible fortress had replaced what had appeared to be a defenseless village, and the cartel was about to discover why some conflicts end before they even start. The outcome had been settled long before, but the last showdown was about to start. In the precise preparation, the cautious planning, and the unwavering solidarity of a people that dared not fear. 3 black helicopters that appeared on the horizon were Reyes's last ploy. Clearly apparent in the dawn light are military-grade gunships with their weapon systems. "Mr. Walker, what now?" The radio crackled with Reyes's voice. "When it comes to air support, your underground network won't help." Ben remained calmly focused in the command bunker, watching the helicopters that were approaching. Titan and Scout remained where they were, waiting for orders. Phillips said, "Those shouldn't be here, sir. The use of military planes will draw federal notice." "I'm done caring," Reyes yelled. "Level the whole town. Show them the true meaning of power." They heard Ben's voice over their network. "Scout, Titan. Sierra Protocol." The dogs moved their teams into new places right away, and every coordinated movement showed how well they had been trained. "Do you still believe you are in charge?" Reyes made fun of it. "Watch as your beloved town burns to the ground." Ben called through his secret channel, "Victoria. Do our pals have a position? Air units of the Border Patrol are waiting. Since the helicopters entered the border, they have been monitored." With their armaments whirling up, the gunships started their attack run. Then, out of the clouds above them, Border Patrol helicopters appeared, illuminating them with floodlight beams. "It's the United States." A voice bellowed, "Border Patrol. Restricted airspace is being violated. You will be shot down if you don't land right away." Anger twisted Reyes's face. "No. Let the fire burn. Destroy everything." The pilots of the gunships paused. Ben only needed their reluctance, caught between the federal response teams and Reyes's orders. He said, "All units, execute." The civilian teams were expertly coordinated by Titan and Scout signals. Disguised surface-to-air missile launchers appeared from hidden locations throughout the town to show off their capabilities rather than to fire. Phillips said, his voice trembling, "Those are military-grade air defense systems." Ben's voice came back, "Where did they get? You're not the only ones with military connections. The distinction is that ours are lawful. In U.S. airspace, the Border Patrol has been waiting for a reason to intercept your gunships." The cartel helicopters were stuck in a precarious situation. Air defenses below, the Border Patrol above, and federal witnesses documenting it all. The commander of the Border Patrol said, "Land your aircraft. This is the last warning you will receive." Trevor saw the tactical demonstration underneath. "Do you think they'll make a foolish attempt?" "You can count on it," Ben said. Reyes refuses to concede. "Mark the main target, Titan." Through the network of tunnels, the German Shepherd proceeded in silence, setting up teams for the following phase. Both canines displayed their exceptional training while Scout oversaw the western regions. The cartel gunships made their decision above ground. 2 fled in the direction of the border. The third plunged toward the town while dragging Reyes himself. Over the radio, Reyes cried out, "If I burn, you burn." Ben ordered now. Advanced anti-aircraft countermeasures were revealed when concealed panels spread out across the town. The gunship's weapons failed to lock, and its targeting systems went wild. Ben gave his defenders an explanation of the electronic warfare suite. "Thanks to our federal law enforcement friends, it's incredible what you can achieve when you collaborate with the proper people." With its pilots struggling with abruptly unresponsive controls, the gunship faltered. Helicopters from the Border Patrol attempted to intercept, but Ben's voice prevented them. "Allow them to land," he said. Reyes just committed his last error. With all of its electronic systems in a complete mess, the cartel leader's chopper crashed heavily in the town plaza. Reyes came out brandishing an automatic gun and shot indiscriminately. "Walker, come out and face me," he cried. "There will be no more traps or trickery." Movement was indicated in the eastern area by Titan's bark. Scout's answer affirmed the security of western positions. Reyes was totally encircled by the dogs. "You still have no idea what you're actually up against, do you?" Ben's voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. "One individual against your cartel was never the issue here. The purpose of this was to demonstrate to others that they need not be terrified." Reyes whirled, searching for the voice's origin. Titan and Scout's combined intelligence was compromising the positions of Ben's civilian defenders, who were methodically disarming his remaining men. "I have an army," yelled Reyes. "I have 100 times this force at my disposal." "Look around you," said Ben coolly. "You have lost your army. Your professional troops gave up. Your military equipment malfunctioned. And the most crucial lesson is still a mystery to you." "Which lesson?" With his weapon flying wildly, Reyes growled. Ben came out of hiding, Titan and Scout at his sides. That numbers or firepower aren't always the best weapons. At times, it involves inspiring individuals to take a united stance. It was already over when Reyes brought out his firearm. Scout and Titan maneuvered with military accuracy. The cartel commander was disarmed and face down before he could shoot as a result of their well-coordinated takedown. As Trevor's deputies proceeded to seize Reyes, Phillips said, "Very impressive dogs." Ben clarified that it was more than that. They serve as metaphors for what occurs when people are taught to resist rather than to be terrified. Victoria brought federal tactical squads with her. Both escaping helicopters were apprehended by the Border Patrol. "We have sufficient proof to dismantle the entire weapons trafficking organization," Ben said, and Colonel Herrera. 3 additional military commanders were also arrested an hour ago. The pipeline for weaponry is complete. Civilian defenders moved out of their posts all over Red Rock. Trained by a former Special Forces operator who saw that true strength derives from togetherness, these ordinary people had the guts to fight back. As Reyes was being led away, Ben said, "You've lost everything. It's not that we outgunned you, rather, it's that you never realized what you were truly up against." "What was that, too?" Reyes spit out. "A group of people who chose to stop being scared." Scout, Titan, get down. While maintaining their alertness, the dogs eased their combat stance. They had not yet completed their mission. Coordination with federal agencies, prisoner security, and cleanup would all take place. As he saw federal officials process seized cartel members, Trevor remarked, "It's hard to believe it worked." "Everyone played their part, which is why it worked," Ben said. "Our federal allies, the community, the defenders, and even the pets." Walter came over with some news from the outside. "Training is already being requested by other localities. They wish to acquire self-defense skills. And they will," Ben promised. "We have just proven something significant thanks to Los Diablos. Even the most powerful cartels can be overthrown when people band together. As the sun climbed higher, Titan and Scout remained where they were. Every movement still reflects their military training. They were no longer merely battle dogs. They served as resistance icons. Evidence that any community could defend itself with the correct instruction and cooperation. The impact of the Red Rock conflict was only getting started. One man, two dogs, and a resolute community might shift the balance of power on the border, as demonstrated by Ben Walker. Additionally, other cartels were going to get a valuable lesson about underestimating tiny towns and their defenders off in the distance. As federal officials processed the cartel members they had detained, the sun rose brightly over Red Rock. With Titan and Scout by his side, Ben observed from his porch as the full extent of their triumph became evident. Victoria joined them and reported the final count. 3 gunships were recovered, 15 military-grade vehicles were seized, 37 cartel operators, including Reyes and Phillips, were apprehended, and there was sufficient evidence to dismantle their whole weapons trafficking network. Will the weapons be traced? Ben inquired. Already taking place. Shipments that vanished from military installations are identified by their serial numbers. An worldwide probe is made possible by Colonel Herrera's involvement. As cars approached, Titan's ears pricked up. Federal teams are coming in greater numbers. They were experts in gathering evidence. Victoria went on, "Your dogs did more than help us win a battle. They contributed to the greatest levels of corruption being exposed." Ben said simply, "They just did what they were trained to do." The community truly deserves the triumph. Along with Walter and other local leaders, Trevor came. Federal agents were securing the town with the assistance of the local defenders, whose professional conduct demonstrated their training. Walter reported that 3 further villages had contacted him. "They are curious about how we overcame Los Diablos." Ben clarified, as Titan and Scout continue their watchful patrol, that it's not only about tactical training. Teaching individuals that they don't need to be fearful is the goal. Federal analysts were examining Ben's protective network within the command bunker. Everyone's attention had been drawn to the operation's complexity. One analyst said, "This is beyond anything we've seen. The employment of geography, the psychological warfare elements, and the integration of civilian defenders with military tactics." Ben informed them that this is because everyone has been thinking incorrectly about it. Cartels cannot be defeated by force alone. Communities' perceptions of themselves must be altered. Suddenly, Scout became aware of movement around the perimeter. Ranchers from a nearby town had come to ask for tips on how to keep their own community safe. Victoria noticed that it was already spreading. Other communities are coming to the realization that they do not have to endure cartel rule. Ray has never understood that, Ben said. He believed he was up against 2 dogs and 1 guy. In reality, he was opposing the notion that common people could acquire self-defense. A training facility was being built out of the subterranean network. Other border settlements would adopt Ben's defensive improvements as a template. According to Trevor, the Border Patrol hopes to create a long-term presence. Red Rock should be used as a forward operations base. Ben nodded, "Good. However, make sure they comprehend that this remains the community-led initiative. We don't work for law enforcement, we work alongside them." Titan and Scout gave the visiting ranchers a demonstration of their training methods. Overnight, the K9's capacity to lead civilian teams had gained notoriety. "It's not just about fighting," Ben told the onlookers. "It has to do with community organization, coordination, and intelligence collecting. The dogs serve as examples of what may be achieved with proper training." Victoria came back from Washington with some news. "Your training program is of interest to several agencies. In other border towns, they hope to set up comparable networks." "They're not getting the point," Ben said. "This cannot be imposed from without. It must originate within the community." Cleanup efforts went on all over Red Rock. Their town was being restored with the aid of the citizen defense. Their collective successes build ties throughout the community. Trevor said Phillips wanted to talk. Claims to have knowledge of more cartel activities. He does, Ben said with a smile. He works as a pro. He is aware of the direction of the wind. The entire operation had been witnessed by the captured cartel lieutenant. Because of his military background, he was able to comprehend how completely they had been outmaneuvered. Phillips informed federal officials that he had never seen anything like it. They outperformed us in more ways than one. They completely altered the border security situation. While Titan and Scout kept up their patrols, their roles were changing. They were no longer merely fighting assets. They served as instructional resources, demonstrating canine training techniques to other communities. Walter said 6 more municipalities have asked for help. Word spread quickly. Ben told them to start with the fundamentals. Basic training, community organizing, and security evaluations. Scout and Titan will assist in assessing their potential. Beyond their wartime accomplishments, the dogs' fame had expanded. They stood for something novel. The potential for successful citizen opposition to cartel rule. Victoria cautioned that other cartels will attempt to infiltrate, in addition to Los Diablos. No, Ben concurred. However, they will be the last to try it here. They will soon be the last people to attempt it anywhere along this boundary. They were transforming the command bunker into a training facility. Other civilizations would learn Ben's defensive innovations and modify them to fit their unique demands and geographical areas. He told community leaders that it goes beyond tactical training. It involves establishing networks, exchanging intelligence, and organizing reactions. The dogs are merely a component of a bigger plan. By showcasing their coordination skills, Titan and Scout proved how civilian teams may collaborate successfully. They had transformed their military training into a useful resource for local populations. Ben went on to say that the cartels thrive on isolation and terror. By fostering relationships and training communities to help one another, we break that. Victoria came back with more information. Changes are already occurring in federal agencies. Other cartels are retreating and re-evaluating their border tactics. They're learning, said Ben. But we are, too. It is more difficult for them to function when every community takes a stand. Red Rock's change was only getting started as the sun started to drop. As Titan and Scout trained alongside new civilian squads, Ben observed how their expertise helped transform regular people into capable defenders. He informed Victoria and Trevor that this was only the beginning. Los Diablos provided us with important evidence that common people can learn self-defense and that communities can fight back. The dogs were still alert, but they were standing differently now. They weren't merely tools for law enforcement or combat. They served as educators, demonstrating to others what was feasible. Victoria warned the cartels that they will change. Let them, Ben said with assurance. Since we now possess knowledge that they do not. That neither their strategies nor their weaponry are their biggest flaw. They think that the only means to govern territory are through violence and terror. Red Rock was no longer merely a town that stood up to a cartel. It had come to represent what could happen when people banded together. A painful lesson about the true meaning of territorial dominance was about to be delivered to other cartels somewhere in the encroaching darkness. Ben was in front of a group of officials from 12 border settlements 2 weeks after the Battle of Red Rock. He was flanked by Titan and Scout, who were a living example of what might be accomplished with training. Ben pointed me a map with cartel territory on it and explained that the cartels depend on isolation. They want every group to feel powerless and alone. Today is the last day of that. With new intelligence reports, Victoria came in. 3 additional cartels have withdrawn their activities along the border. Their entire network is feeling the impact of Los Diablos' defeat. Ben nodded, good. However, that is only the start. Scout, Titan, show. The dog's well-honed movements demonstrated to the assembled onlookers how well civilian teams could coordinate. They had transformed their military training into a facsimile that communities could use. Ben said, "Look at way they move. It has nothing to do with violence or aggression. It has to do with communication, coordination, and territorial control." When Walter came, he brought news from the initial training wave. Local dogs are currently being trained, and 4 towns have already set up their rudimentary defensive systems. Ben reminded them that the dogs are only a part of it. In the communal networks, the true powers were growing. Next step, Scout, Titan. Advanced coordination skills were displayed by the German Shepherd and Border Collie, demonstrating how various teams may collaborate across various industries. Ben went on, Los Diablos made a crucial error. They believed that defeating one community would demoralize everyone. Rather, they demonstrated to us all what is feasible. Law enforcement updates were brought by Trevor. Significant hiccups in cartel operations are being reported by federal officials. Moving the product through trained communities is proving to be difficult. Because they are unable to employ their typical strategies, Ben clarified. When individuals are able to resist, intimidation is ineffective. Boys, show them. In order to demonstrate how civilian defenders could maintain control of territory without resorting to direct conflict, Titan and Scout organized a sophisticated demonstration. Ben informed the assembled leaders that their communities are learning more than simply self-defense. They are learning to cooperate, exchange knowledge, and help one another. Victoria came back smarter. Federal agencies have been contacted by 2 additional cartels on terms of surrender. They claim that it's getting too hard to maintain control of the border. As he watched Titan and Scout practice with civilian squads, Ben retorted, "That's because they're fighting the wrong battle. They continue to think in terms of fear and force. We're creating something new." Red Rock's training facility had changed quickly. What had begun as a defensive bunker had evolved into an advanced community defense training facility. Ben clarified that the training is tailored to the requirements of each town. Distinct resources, hazards, and terrain. However, the fundamentals are still the same. More community representatives are coming for training, and Titan is warned of oncoming cars. Scout demonstrated the smooth integration they had created by coordinating with the security staff. Victoria noted that it's spreading more quickly than we anticipated. Ben answered, "Because people are ready. They had been waiting for evidence of resistance. We got such evidence from Los Diablos." A map of the border region, showcasing the expanding network of trained communities, was shown by the command center. A hamlet that had learned to resist cartel influence was symbolized by each point of light. Ben informed the leaders gathered that this goes beyond defense training. Instead of relying solely on force, we are creating a new kind of border security that is based on community strength. By working with local dogs, Titan and Scout demonstrated how simple instincts for guard dogs and herding might be transformed into highly effective security tools. Ben clarified that every community has resources they are unaware of. All we're doing is teaching them to make use of what they already have. Trevor brought field reports with him. 2 other cartel activities were shut down. Direct intervention was not even necessary for the communities. It was enough that organized resistance was a menace. Ben nodded, because easy wins are what the cartels depend on. They lack the necessary tools to combat self-defense savvy societies. Tactical defense was no longer the only focus of the training program. Communities were learning how to coordinate, gather intelligence, and plan strategically. Ben informed the leaders that fighting cartels was not the only goal. The goal is to create something durable. Something they can't overcome with fear or force. By showcasing sophisticated patrol strategies, Titan and Scout illustrated how local communities might uphold security without turning their cities into military bases. Ben clarified that the dogs are more than just security assets. They serve as educators, teaching us how to collaborate well. From Washington, Victoria brought news. Several agencies are interested in researching your program. They are referring to it as a community-based security revolution. They're not getting the point, Ben said. This has nothing to do with developing a new security system. The goal is to demonstrate to others that they have always had the power. Another training day came to an end as the sun sank over Red Rock. Representatives from the community left with fresh insights, more self-assurance, and strengthened relationships with their neighbors. It's performing better than we anticipated, Trevor noted. As Ben watched Titan and Scout go about their nightly patrol, he clarified that it's not only about training. The goal is to alter people's perceptions of their communities and themselves. The dogs were no longer merely resistance symbols. They served as evidence that regular communities might resist seemingly insurmountable forces with the right preparation and cooperation. Victoria cautioned that the cartels will attempt to adjust. Ben grinned and said, "Let them, since each modification and new strategy they attempt merely serves to demonstrate to other people that resistance is feasible." Ben observed Titan and Scout working with the upcoming group of neighborhood dogs as night fell. Every community that refused to be ruled by fear and every town that learned to stand together would carry on their heritage. He informed his assembled classmates that this was only the beginning. The cartels believed that isolation and fear would allow them to govern. Rather, they have imparted the most crucial lesson to all of us: togetherness, not force, is the source of true strength. One community at a time, the border was shifting. A brutal lesson about the true nature of power was being taught to other cartels somewhere in the Titans. A month after the training program started, a cartel investigation targeting Sierra Vista, one of the newly trained communities, served as the first significant test of the new community defense network. The mayor of the town told Ben, "They hit exactly like you predicted. We were prepared, but it was 3 in the morning and they were attempting to gain ground." As Titan and Scout worked with Sierra Vista's recently trained defense dogs, Ben went over the after-action reports. Without firing a shot, the cartel's attempted infiltration had been repulsed. Ben said, "Your defensive network did a perfect job. The dogs sensed their presence. Coordination was maintained by civilian workers, and the cartel was unable to identify any vulnerabilities." Victoria brought intelligence updates. For additional municipalities have reported similar incidents. Various cartels, same outcome. They investigate, discover coordinated opposition, and retreat. Ben clarified that their entire operating strategy is predicated on identifying easy targets. If you demonstrate preparation and coordination, people will turn away. While Scout worked on coordination drills, Titan used the neighborhood dogs to show sophisticated detection techniques. The civilian personnel increasing confidence was a clear indication of the outcomes. It's no longer just defense, Trevor noted. In actuality, these communities are driving cartels from their lands. Because they're collaborating, Ben said. As each defense is successful, additional communities join the network. A map illustrating cartel operations throughout the area was shown by the command center. There was a noticeable difference. One notable weakness in cartel control was the presence of trained communities. Walter stated that Los Diablos attempted to move into Thompson Creek yesterday. Discovered that, rather than a single, isolated target, they were up against 3 coordinated communities. "Show me," Ben said. Scout and Titan made their way to the tactical display. Their existence serves as a reminder of the system's origins. The paper described the response coordination efforts of Red Valley, Sierra Vista, and Thompson Creek. Cartel scouts discovered that every possible weakness was covered, every approach was scrutinized, and every route was tracked. Walter went on, "They didn't even try a full incursion. Simply turned around and walked away. These communities aren't worth the bother, and word is getting out quickly." Victoria delivered more intelligence updates. Significant changes in cartel conduct are being reported by federal agencies. Areas with skilled communities are being deliberately avoided by them. Because they no longer have a tactical advantage, Ben clarified. They capitalize on the fear and isolation of communities. That is no longer the case. More border town representatives are coming for training, and Titan is warned of oncoming cars. More people were taking notice of the success stories. According to Trevor, 3 already trained villages are wanting advanced coordination techniques, while 6 more communities are requesting basic instruction. Ben observed Scout working with a group of local dogs, demonstrating how simple instincts for herding may be transformed into highly skilled security tools. He informed the assembled leaders that the cartels had committed a basic error. Their best weapon, they believed, was fear. They taught us all to be fearless instead. Reports from throughout the border region kept coming in. In addition to protecting themselves, communities that had finished training were actively assisting their neighbors in setting up comparable initiatives. Victoria said it was like watching a wall being constructed. But not of steel and concrete, of well-organized, unflappable communities. Ben clarified that it was better than a wall. With every obstacle, we're creating a network that adjusts and gets stronger. With recently trained teams, Titan and Scout displayed sophisticated coordination techniques. Their wartime experience has been transformed into a long-lasting asset for communities. Trevor announced that Santa Sierra had reported another withdrawal. When cartel members attempted to make an impression, they encountered coordinated opposition and withdrew without a fight. Because violence is costly, Ben said. Long-term conflicts with prepared communities are unaffordable for the cartels. It's detrimental to business. The training facility was now able to serve several towns at once. Aspects of the program are taught differently to different groups. Detection, response, coordination, and communication. Ben told a fresh generation of community leaders that the dogs are the key. Not only for safety, but also to teach people how to collaborate well. Victoria delivered federal agency news. The Red Rock model is the name given to it. Information regarding your training program is being requested by other border regions. Ben answered, as long as they grasp the basics. This has nothing to do with forming military formations. Teaching communities to stand together is the goal. Working with a group of ranchers' dogs, Titan demonstrated how to harness the dog's innate protective tendencies to create efficient security measures. Even canines who were not trained could quickly pick up coordination skills from Scout. According to Trevor, 4 further cartel enterprises were shut down this week. Not as a result of police activity. Due to a shortage of space for operations. They are just no longer able to move freely. Ben nodded, as they're accustomed to working in the dark. Since every community knows how to bring attention to their events, it is difficult to do that. Statistics weren't the only indicators of the success. Communities that had spent years in terror were changing. Regaining their dignity and their lands. Ben explained to his students that Los Diablos' loss was more than just a tactical triumph. It was evidence that the cartel's illusion of power is real. The delusion that they are unstoppable. Ben observed Titan and Scout working with the upcoming generation of security canines as nightfall drew near. Every town that learned to persevere would carry on their legacy. The cartels will not give up, Victoria said. Ben said, they will, of course. However, every setback strengthens our network. Each town that successfully resists serves as evidence that other communities can follow suit. The boundary area was evolving. Not via coercion or government intervention. But by teaching communities how to defend one another and themselves. Security was no longer the only consideration. It was about giving people hope again. Ben informed the assembled leaders that this is how true change occurs. Not by external influence. But rather from communities realizing their own power. Somewhere in the encroaching darkness, other cartels were discovering that terror and power were insufficient to seize some territory. Because once courage is aroused, it spreads more quickly than fear ever could. Ben stood on a mountaintop viewing the changed border area 2 months after the Battle of Red Rock. Beside him, Titan and Scout sat vigilantly as the sun sank, illuminating the desert with its well-known golden hues. Federal Intelligence's final affirmation. Victoria said she joined them. The final significant cartel activity in our industry has entirely disappeared. It's known as the Red Rock Effect. Areas with skilled communities are deliberately avoided by cartels. 3 separate communities' evening patrol teams coordinated their operations beneath them. Their dogs are working in unison. A direct outcome of the training that Titan and Scout underwent. Ben noted that security is no longer the only concern. Observe their movements. How they work together. These are not frightened individuals sheltering behind barriers. These communities are aware of their own strengths. Trevor showed up with the most recent data. 90% fewer cartels are active in training territories. Routes used for drug trafficking were totally interrupted. Our towns are even being avoided by human trafficking operations. As Ben watched Titan lead a training exercise, he explained that it's because they can no longer operate in the open. They are all linked, and every community is now a hardened target. The command center has developed into a highly advanced center for coordination. 20 distinct communities are represented, and they collaborate to coordinate reactions and share intelligence. Walter reported that Sierra Vista stopped another probe attempt last night. Cartel scouts discovered that every route was covered and every approach was watched. They didn't even make an effort to continue. Show them, Ben said. Scouts stepped up to show the local dogs how their well-coordinated patrol patterns had produced an unbreakable defense system. According to Trevor, 3 additional communities finished advanced training this week. Every day, the network grows stronger. Victoria brought satellite photos of the altered terrain. Federal authorities are in awe. Now, entire cartel territories are just deserted. When every community knows how to fight back, they are unable to keep control. Titan noticed movement and the arrival of another training group. The German Shepherd's military heritage had been turned into a teaching tool that could be used in many places. Ben informed the assembled leaders that the cartels had made a crucial error of judgment. They believed that capturing Scout would depress us. Rather, they demonstrated to the world that resistance was feasible. As several communities worked on various program components, the training facility was a hive of activity. While Titan collaborated with new security teams, Scout displayed sophisticated coordinating techniques. It's no longer just defense, Trevor noted. Territory is being actively reclaimed by these communities. There is nowhere for the cartels to operate. Ben answered, because they never realized what they were actually fighting for. Their best weapon, they believed, was fear. Rather, it turned into their biggest flaw. There are still reports coming in from all around the industry. After years of being ruled by cartels, communities were suddenly strong and their well-coordinated defensive systems prevented criminal activity. Victoria said that Los Diablos attempted to set up a new route yesterday. Discovered that they were up against 5 cohesive communities rather than lone targets. In a matter of hours, they pulled out. They did, Ben said, nodding. Finding weaknesses is the foundation of their entire business strategy. There are no more weak points. Every successful defense, every well-coordinated response, and every community standing firm are testaments to Titan and Scout's legacy as they worked with the next generation of security dogs. Trevor said federal agencies want to extend the program to other industries. They are referring to it as a border security revolution. Ben answered, as long as they know the basic truth. The goal here is not to establish a new security force. Teaching communities to be strong is the goal. By traveling between zones with ease, the nightly patrol squads showed off their teamwork. A complex network of community protection had developed from what had begun as simple security. According to Victoria, 4 additional cartel lieutenants turned themselves in this week. They claim that operations here can no longer be sustained. The land is too unfriendly. Ben clarified, not angry. Unified. Tell them why. Titan and Scout oversaw a challenging training exercise that showed how various cultures might collaborate effectively. They had transformed their military training into a replicable and sustainable practice. It's a permanent transformation, Trevor noted. Even in the event that the cartels attempted a forceful return, they would fail, Ben concluded. For we are no longer merely defending territory. We are protecting households, families, and communities that are able to support one another. Ben observed the patrol squads coordinating their handoffs as night fell. Every community helps the others. Every trained team is a component of a wider network. He informed the assembled leaders that this is what true security looks like. Communities that stand together, rather than barriers or weapons. There is no cartel that can beat it. Victoria brought official government agency confirmation. It's official. Our industry has been deemed cartel-free. For the first time in decades. Ben answered, because the cartels finally found out. Observing Titan and Scout as they work with their pupils. There are some areas that cannot be occupied by force. Fear won't control some people. The border area was becoming a network of cohesive, powerful communities rather than a battlefield for cartels. The cartels were unable to break what began with a single guy and 2 dogs. Ben informed his class that this was only the beginning. Every resilient community serves as evidence that others can follow suit. That's the way true change occurs. The most difficult lesson of all was being learned by other cartels somewhere in the encroaching darkness. That the strongest regions are sometimes those where people have learned to unite rather than those with the greatest weaponry. Federal officials and Ben took a tour of the enlarged training facility 3 months after Red Rock's victory. Working with a new set of community canines, Titan and Scout skills are now acknowledged across the country. According to the top federal agent, the figures are extraordinary. All training industries had a 95% decrease in cartel activities. No new avenues for trafficking were created. No attempts to reclaim territory. They are referring to it as the most effective border security initiative ever. Ben observed Titan leading a challenging training session. Because everyone had the wrong idea about it. A border cannot be secured by force alone. Communities must be equipped to defend themselves. Victoria brought intelligence updates. 3 other cartels have given up on their border activities entirely. They are referring to our area as the dead zone, according to their internal emails. Not due to violence, but rather because they are no longer able to function here. Tell them why, Ben said. Scout stepped up to show the local teams how their well-coordinated patrol patterns had produced an unbreakable defense system. According to Trevor, 28 villages were fully taught. An additional 35 are in different phases of the program. The network is growing more quickly than we can keep up with. A map of the border area was shown in the command center. What had formerly been cartel territory was now a network of interconnected protected communities that supported one another. The federal agent noted that the change was significant. These are more than just safety precautions. You have altered the way whole towns operate. Ben answered, because we showed them something the cartels never understood. Fear is not the source of true security. Unity is the source of it. Titan became aware of movement. Arriving to examine the program are representatives from neighboring border states. The military training of the German Shepherds had developed into a potentially revolutionary approach to border security. According to Victoria, 4 additional cartel lieutenants turned themselves in this week. It's not only about lost land, they say. The operating model as a whole is disintegrating. Ben nodded as he observed Scout organizing a multi-team drill. Of course it is. Fear and isolation were the foundations of their authority. We have demonstrated how to shatter both in communities. The training center was now used as a template for national security initiatives. Various authorities dispatched observers to examine the adaptation of military methods for civilian defense. The federal agent disclosed that the Red Rock concept is being explored at the highest levels. They intend to apply it along the whole border area. Ben warned, so long as they get the fundamental idea. The goal is not to establish a brand new type of police force. It's about giving communities the tools they need to defend themselves. Titan and Scout trained the upcoming generation of canines. With every successful program graduate, their legacy grows. What had begun as a set of military skills had evolved into something revolutionary. According to Trevor, 3 further areas saw the total collapse of cartel infrastructure. Not through arrests or raids. When every community knows how to fight back, they just cannot continue to operate. Ben clarified that it was because we altered the basic equation. Rather than confronting cartels head-on, we disrupted their business model. The success of the initiative was proven by the evening Patra. LS. Several communities working together in unison. They reinforce and overlap each other's defense networks. A ripple effect is being reported by federal agencies, Victoria continued. Because they are close to our neighborhoods, cartels are withdrawing from places where they haven't even begun training. Ben said, they've learned a costly lesson. No matter how much firepower you bring, some areas cannot be taken by force. Titan led another drill, demonstrating how civilian teams may benefit from military accuracy. Scout demonstrated how innate instincts might be transformed into highly skilled security assets by working with neighborhood dogs. According to Trevor, the change goes beyond security. Families are returning, local businesses are reopening, and individuals are taking back their lives in these flourishing towns. Ben nodded since they are no longer terrified. Take a look at that for them. The dogs put together a sophisticated presentation that demonstrated how several groups could cooperate to rule over huge areas. They had transformed their military experience into something replicable and long-lasting. Victoria stated that 7 other municipalities have requested training this week. The waiting list continues to expand. Because, Ben continued, success breeds success. Every resilient community serves as evidence that others can follow suit. Titan and Scout guided their crews through advanced drills as the federal officials looked on. With each coordinated movement, the program's intelligence was demonstrated. The lead agent pointed out that this extends beyond border security. You have developed a novel approach to community defense. No, Ben clarified. We've learned the fact that communities are strongest when they stand together, something that cartels attempted to obscure. Ben observed the patrol squads coordinating their handoffs as nightfall drew near. Every trained team was a part of a wider network that was becoming stronger every day, and each community helped the others. The cartels will not give up, Victoria said. Good, Ben said. Because each failed attempt only serves to reinforce the lessons we have been teaching. Only when people feel helpless does that terror function. The border region was now a model of community collaboration instead of a warfare. What began as a single man protecting his dogs evolved into a social and security revolution. That's how long-lasting transformation occurs. Ben informed the onlookers. By demonstrating their own strength, not by coercion or terror. The most costly lesson of all was being learned by other cartels somewhere in the encroaching darkness, that certain communities become more cohesive the more you attempt to split them apart, and that some regions get stronger the more you try to shatter them. National security authorities gathered at Red Rock's training center for months after the war that altered the course of history. With Titan and Scout on his sides, Ben stood in front of them, offering the last proof that their program had worked. Victoria informed the officials gathered that the cartels had completely left all trained sectors. The entire operational paradigm has failed, there have been no attempts at new invasions in the last month, and there are no active trafficking routes. Real-time data from throughout the border zone was shown in the command center. An interwoven network of safe communities, each bolstering and supporting the others, replaced the cartel regions that were before visible. Ben clarified that it goes beyond statistics, citing Titan's demonstration of sophisticated coordinating strategies with graduate teams. Take a look at the changes in these towns. Trevor presented the most recent reports. Businesses are reopening, families are coming back, and local economies are recovering. 6 months ago, these areas were ghost towns, but now they are bustling neighborhoods. As Ben watched Scout work with the next generation of security canines, he added, because we changed the fundamental equation. We demonstrated to communities how to prevent cartel operations rather than engaging in direct combat with them. The Director of National Security examined the information. The outcomes surpass our expectations. No law enforcement effort or military operation has been as successful as this one. That's because everyone was doing it incorrectly, Ben said. Land cannot be secured by force alone. People must be provided with the means to defend themselves. More community representatives are coming for advanced training, and Titan is aware of movement. The military heritage of the German Shepherd had developed into a force capable of reshaping entire areas. Victoria claimed that 35 villages have received full training. 40 more are putting the program into action. The network is starting to support itself. Ben told them to show them how. In order to prove how their combined efforts produced an unbreakable defense system, Scout moved to showcase with several teams. Trevor went on to say that the cartels aren't simply pulling out. Infrastructure is being abandoned, safe shelters are being set on fire, and entire regions are being declared unrecoverable. Ben clarified that their entire operational strategy relies on isolation and terror. We have demonstrated how to shatter both in communities. The training center was now a model for the country. Various organizations researched ways to modify military strategies for civilian defense without inflaming local populations. Victoria said the change extends beyond security. These communities are taking back their future rather than only protecting their area. Titan and Scout put up a sophisticated exhibition that demonstrated how their military experience had been transformed into a long-lasting resource for communities. According to Trevor, 5 additional cartels have ceased all border operations. They're declaring it a losing cause, according to their internal emails. Ben retorted, because we taught them something they never expected to learn, that no matter how much firepower you bring, some territories can't be taken by force. The success of the initiative was proven by the evening patrols. An unbreakable chain of security is created by several communities collaborating harmoniously and utilizing their defense networks. Victoria noted that federal agencies are documenting a radical change in cartel tactics. Any place that even appears to be implementing our method is being avoided by them. Ben nodded, they've learned a costly lesson. Violence isn't always the solution to problems. Fear won't break certain communities. Titan led another drill, demonstrating how civilian teams might preserve military accuracy. Scout demonstrated how innate protective instincts could be transformed into advanced security assets through his work with community dogs. The National Security Director noted that the effects are not limited to the border. This has the potential to completely transform our national approach to community defense. Ben warned, as long as you keep in mind the fundamental idea. The goal is not to establish a brand new type of police force. It's about demonstrating the strength of communities. During a final demonstration, the dogs' movements demonstrated the flawless fusion of civilian use and military training. What had begun as a set of special forces skills had evolved into something revolutionary. Victoria stated that 9 other localities have requested training this week. We can't keep up with the program's rapid growth. Because, Ben continued, success breeds success. Every resilient community serves as evidence that others can follow suit. While Titan and Scout worked with their troops, the national officials observed. Every precise response and every well-coordinated movement demonstrated the program's sophistication. The security director acknowledged that this goes beyond what we thought was conceivable. You've done more than just fortify the border. You have developed a new national defense model. No, Ben clarified. We've brought to mind something that was previously forgotten: communities coming together, rather than using force or terror, is the source of true security. Ben saw how the patrol teams coordinated their handoffs as night fell, with each town helping the others and each trained team being a part of a wider network that was getting stronger every day. Victoria warned that the cartels would continue to test. Let them, Ben said. Because each failed attempt only serves to reinforce the lesson we've been teaching: the more you try to break a territory, the stronger it becomes. The border area was now a model of communal collaboration instead of a battlefield. What began as a single man protecting his dogs evolved into a social and security revolution. Ben informed the assembled officials that this is how true change occurs, not by using excessive force, but by demonstrating to people that they are not helpless. The last lesson that cartels in the area were learning, somewhere in the encroaching darkness, was that sometimes the strongest territories aren't those with the most weaponry, but rather those where communities have learned to stand together fearlessly. Ben Walker stood on the veranda of his ranch at sunrise, exactly as he did that fateful morning, 6 months after Los Diablos made the terrible error of stealing a sheepdog. Scout and Titan were seated next to him, alert but at ease. Old habits don't go away easily. Victoria reported joining them after receiving final confirmation from federal intelligence. The final cartel activity in the whole area has ceased operations. They are no longer able to function here, neither through raids or arrests. 3 separate communities' early patrols coordinated their operations beneath them. As a live testament to Titan and Scout's training regimen, their dogs operated in perfect harmony. It's hard to think that a stolen sheepdog was the catalyst for everything. Trevor watched, looking over the final figures. We're now examining the most effective border security initiative ever. Ben observed Titan leading a training session with the upcoming generation of neighborhood canines. They believed that they were pilfering leverage. Rather, they handed us the secret to making all the difference. As officials from 40 distinct villages coordinated their daily operations, the command center was bustling with activity. What began as a single man's defense evolved into a regional cooperative concept. Do you recall what Reyes said? Victoria inquired. Did he have a whole cartel? That he was able to use overwhelming power? As Scout displayed sophisticated synchronization skills, Ben retorted, he never understood what he was really fighting. He believed that fear was the source of power. We demonstrated to everyone that togetherness is the key. The landscape had changed, with community patrol dogs now keeping a calm watch where cartel lookouts had formerly been on hilltops, as the early sun showed. It was bravery, not force, that had transformed the border region. According to Trevor, the most recent figures are in. No successful cartel operation in 6 months. No area intrusions, no new avenues for trafficking. Our neighborhoods are being avoided even by the smugglers. Ben nodded because we altered the game. Now demonstrate how it operates. Scout and Titan guided their groups through a challenging demonstration. Although the dogs moved with military accuracy, their function had changed from fighting to protecting, from war to peace. The change is finished, Victoria said. Across the whole border, federal authorities are putting the Red Rock paradigm into practice. Training programs are being requested by other nations. Ben observed the subsequent group of community dogs working alongside their masters. This isn't about improving security forces, so long as they don't lose sight of the essential reality. Teaching communities to stand together is the goal. The training center was no longer merely a defensive school. It served as a representation of what societies could do when they resisted letting fear rule them. According to Trevor, 4 more cartels were formally disbanded this week. Operating here now is worthless, according to their own paperwork. The land is too unfriendly. Ben clarified, not angry. Unified. They were never able to comprehend that. Make a difference for them. By coordinating with the patrol squads, Titan and Scout showed how military instruction might be modified for community safety. Every canine and handler they trained would carry on their heritage. Do you recall when the cartels believed they could cut off communities? Victoria inquired. Take a peek at them now. Cooperating. Helping one another. More powerful than any cartel ever could be. Ben answered, because we showed them something stronger than fear. We gave them hope. The new reality was shown by the morning patrols. Once terrified communities now marched with assurance. Once governed by cartels using violence, these territories were now safeguarded by collaboration. Security is no longer the only consideration. Trevor watched. These are flourishing communities. Families are coming back. Companies are reopening. Places that had been abandoned by the cartels are now reviving. As he observed Titan and Scout working with their kids, Ben remarked, because we remembered something they wanted us to forget. Walls and weaponry don't provide that real strength. People standing together is the source of it. The final metamorphosis was shown in the command center. A network of protected communities now stretches across the area where cartel areas once dominated the map. Everyone is helping the others. Each demonstrated the possibility of resistance. The cartels will not give up, Victoria said. Ben grinned and let them. Because each failed attempt only serves to reinforce the lessons we have been teaching. That some things are not subject to coercion. Fear cannot break some spirits. Watching the sunrise turn the desert gold, Titan and Scout sat vigilantly. They were no longer merely military canines. Or maybe just devoted friends. They were now emblems of something greater. Evidence that courage spreads more quickly than fear once it is ignited. Ben said to them, "This is your legacy." Demonstrating to communities that they never needed to be fearful in the first place, in addition to teaching them how to defend themselves. The noises of life returned to the border area on the morning breeze. Where cartel lookouts formerly stationed, children were playing. Families strolling along the route historically used by smugglers. Communities that were once dominated by terror are now flourishing. Ben informed Victoria and Trevor that the cartels had committed a deadly error. They believed that robbing Scout would depress us. Rather, they handed us the secret to permanently destroying their power. Scout and Titan took their places of observation, standing calmly yet ready. By teaching people how to stand together, they had transformed a region without resorting to violence. As he watched the light rise higher, Ben remarked, "This is how real change happens. By remembering what the cartels wanted us to forget, not by coercion or terror. Unity, not division, is the source of that real power. Not out of fear, but with courage. Not standing alone, but standing together." In the early hours of the morning, cartels around the area were discovering the last, indisputable fact. That certain areas are insurmountable. There are spirits that are unbreakable. Additionally, some groups are impervious to terror once they learn to unite. 2 more amazing tales await you directly on your screen in the next section. You won't want to miss these if you like this one. Simply click to view, and remember to subscribe. A lot would be at stake.
Disclaimer. This channel stands against all forms of intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violations of human rights. The stories shared here are original creations, developed to encourage reflection, understanding, and constructive dialogue. All content is produced with a commitment to respecting diversity and honoring human dignity.